Chapter 530. Shadow Killer? The blue-clothed youth paused for a moment before shaking his head with a smile. You misunderstood, I'm not Shadow Killer. Muyu frowned. This person wasn't Shadow Killer? Since you're not Shadow Killer, why did you kidnap a little girl? Muyu didn't like being threatened. I'm Bai Yetian. I'm here to discuss something with you. Bai Yetian smiled. What is it? Aren't you curious how Sikong Chiwon became a severed soul stage cultivator from the Jindan period in such a short time? Bai Yetian asked. Sikong Chiwon went from an unknown Jindan period cultivator to a severed soul stage cultivator in just a few months. This secret was coveted by too many people. If they could obtain this secret, it meant that a sect could cultivate an extremely talented extreme immortal like Sikong Chiwon in a short time. The 8 gates teamed up for Sikong Chiwon's secret, and Bai Yetian also seemed to be here for Sikong Chiwon's secret. Are you from the 8 gates? Muyu was disgusted by the clowns from the 8 gates. Bai Yetian shook his head. No, I'm not from the 8 gates. That's good, then I won't waste any more words. Sikong Chiwon has nothing to do with me, just hand over Xiao Xin. Muyu said. It didn't matter to him whether Sikong Chiwon reached the severed soul stage in a few months or if he worked hard to reach the severed soul stage. Muyu would eventually fight with him. Winning or losing was the most important thing. The person Muyu wanted to kill the most wasn't Sikong Chiwon, but Tian Buwai. Bai Yetian smiled. Don't worry, that girl should have safely returned to the Wood Mansion. Because I couldn't find a way to ask fellow Muyu out, I could only use this method. Please forgive me. Muyu snorted. You could have gone to the Wood Mansion to find me instead of using my family to threaten me. I don't like this way of meeting. There are so many people watching the Wood Manor every day. I don't want to expose my identity, Bai Yetian said with a smile. Muyu furrowed his brows. Bai Yetian's expression didn't seem like he was lying, but he hated being forced out like this. Thus, he said impatiently, it's your business if you don't want to be exposed. I'm not interested in making a deal with you. First, Ru Anna invited him with a self-righteous attitude, and then Bai Yetian used this method to lure him out. He was really annoyed. Let me put it this way. If I'm not wrong, fellow Daoist Mu, you should have a brother you just met, Mu Qingfan. As far as I know, he was injured by Sikong Chiwon, and even you couldn't save him. Could it be that your excellency didn't notice that Mu Qingfan's injuries were somewhat abnormal? Bai Yetian asked. Muyu naturally knew about the abnormality in Mu Qingfan's body. Not only him, even the people from the 8 gates who were knocked unconscious by Sikong Chiwon were helpless. Bai Yetian continued, that power is very strange. Furthermore, there's a powerful demonic power in their bodies causing trouble. According to our investigation, Sikong Chiwon's cultivation would suddenly increase on the 6th day of every month. His spiritual power is closely related to that demonic power. And the place where he went missing during the Jindan period was here, the Death Desert. The 6th day of every month. What did this have to do with Sikong Chiwon's cultivation method? Muyu remembered that Sikong Chiwon had arranged a battle with them on the 6th day of the 6th month. Muyu didn't know that the Death Desert was the place where Sikong Chiwon went missing. A year ago, Sikong Chiwon was still an unknown cultivator during the Jindan period. It was said that he went missing during a sandstorm with his caravan. Everyone thought that he had died in the desert, but he miraculously survived. A year later, he had become a famous dark horse on the Supreme Immortal ranking. He had defeated countless Supreme Immortals. His rapid increase in strength was definitely closely related to his disappearance. However, Muyu was still suspicious of Bai Yetian. He didn't even know who Bai Yetian was. Your investigation, who are you guys? Bai Yetian's eyes flashed. You don't need to know who we are for now. However, you can only save your brother if you help us investigate Sikong Chiwon. Muyu glanced at Bai Yetian coldly. He raised his eyebrows and turned to leave. Bai Yetian was stunned. He didn't expect Muyu to be so straightforward. He landed in front of Muyu and stopped smiling. Dao friend, what is the meaning of this? Muyu slowly raised his head. I don't like your arrogant tone. I also don't like the way you asked me out. If you don't want me to know your identity, then don't appear in front of me. I have no interest in helping you. Mu Yu hated people who thought too highly of themselves and felt that others didn't deserve to know their identity. These people deserved a beating the most. If they wanted help, they would hide it. If they didn't want to be honest, they were just asking to be scolded. Bai Yetian's tone became unfriendly. He was at least in the spirit-severing stage. Even though the disciple of a true god was strong, he still didn't put him in his eyes. He didn't think that he would lose to an supreme immortal in the out-of-body stage 9. Dao friend Mu Yu, are you really not willing to cooperate? Bai Yetian asked. His spirit-severing stage cultivation started to spread around his body. Mu Yu's gaze became cold. Do I need to cooperate with you? The power of the 9th celestial level of out-of-body stage raged in the desert, shaking away the yellow sand that swept over. It was no weaker than Bai Yetian's spirit-severing stage aura. Bai Yetian frowned. Then, he relaxed and smiled. He retracted his aura and said, I was rash. I apologize. Dao friend Mu Yu really lives up to your name. Now, I know how you killed Tian Kaiyu in one move. In the past, Mu Yu had killed Tian Kaiyu of the Heavenly Star Sect with a single move. This matter wasn't spread out because he had killed Tian Kaiyu in front of more than 30 talented disciples of the 8 sects. More than 30 people couldn't stop Mu Yu from killing Tian Kaiyu. If this matter was spread out, it would only damage the reputation of the 8 sects. Other than the people of the 8 gates, no one knows about this. How do you know? Mu Yu was very disgusted with the people of the 8 gates. Bai Yetian smiled and shook his head. There are some powerful forces hidden in the cultivation world. The 8 gates don't represent the entire cultivation world. I naturally have my ways to know. Let me introduce myself. I'm from the Shadowless race. Shadowless race? I've never heard of the Shadowless race. Mu Yu shook his head. Bai Yetian showed a matter-of-fact expression and said, not to mention you, very few people in the 3 continents know about our existence. Everyone knows about the silhouette being, but very few people know about the Shadowless race. Because our existence is to destroy the silhouette being. Mu Yu was a little surprised. You are against the silhouette being? The silhouette being specialized in all kinds of illegal activities. They collected all kinds of information on the 3 continents to sell, solved all kinds of troubles for people, and the thing they did the most was killing people. The silhouette being is not as simple as you think. The background behind it is very powerful, and the things they do are very strange. In short, it involves a very secret relationship in the cultivation world, so I can't say too much. The reason I came to you is that Qing Ming, the shadow killer of the Shadowless race, wants to kill you. I was ordered by the Shadowless race to help you. Kill me? I don't understand. Shouldn't Shadowless races target be Sikong Chiwen or Tian Bu Wait? Mu Yu frowned. Most self-cultivators underestimated Mu Yu's strength and thought that Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bu Wait were the focus of this battle, so Shadowless race's target should be them. Bai Yetian shook his head. You're wrong. Everyone thinks it's just a gamble between 2 rich people, but the real person who hired Shadowless race to kill you is actually the leader of Stargate, Tian Yuhen. The leader of Stargate, Tian Yuhen? What? Tian Bu Wait. Do you have so little confidence in your son? Mu Yu sneered. Bai Yetian felt Mu Yu's calm aura and couldn't help but secretly admire Mu Yu's courage. Most people would be nervous when they knew they were being targeted by Shadowless race, but Mu Yu's expression was very calm, as if he didn't care at all. You've been missing for more than half a year, and even the Shadowless race couldn't find you. However, it's said that a talented array master appeared in the battle between the array faction and the talisman faction a few months ago, and everyone suspects it's you. At that time, the people who came to help the talisman faction were all wiped out, which was a big loss. The Stargate suspected that you were behind it and even suspected that you've become the leader of the array talisman faction. Tian Yuhen didn't want anything to happen to his son, so he chose to pay a huge price to hire Shadowless race's Qingming to assassinate you. Bai Yetian stared at Mu Yu's expression, trying to read something from Mu Yu's expression. Even he could only guess that Mu Yu was the leader of the array talisman faction. It's really hard for the people of Stargate. Mu Yu still said without changing his expression. Judging from your speed and the protective array formation of the Mu family, you must be Feng Mu who helped the array faction. Bai Yetian said. Mu Yu didn't want to admit or deny it. He just said lightly, "Why should I believe what you said? Shadowless race has always been very careful, and it's impossible for outsiders to know who the client is. But this time, many people know that Shadowless race's Qingming came to Clearwater City because I released the news." Bai Yetian laughed. You released the news? Mu Yu still had doubts in his heart. Yes, I released the news to destroy Shadowless race's plan. I don't want you to be killed by Shadowless race. Bai Yetian said. It's not certain who will kill who. Mu Yu snorted coldly. Bai Yetian said non-committally, in short, I was ordered by my superiors to help you avoid being killed by Shadowless race. In exchange, I need you to assist us in the investigation of Sikong Chiwen. We have more information than you, and we know more about Sikong Chiwen, Tian Bului, and the Shadowless race. I'm afraid you can't protect the Mu family by yourself. I can deal with Shadowless race myself, I don't need your help. Mu Yu said straightforwardly. This is not your personal matter. I don't mind telling you that I caught the little girl just to remind you that if the Shadowless race can do something to the Mu family, so can the Shadowless race. If you cooperate with us, we will ensure the safety of the Mu family. Are you threatening me? Mu Yu said in a deep voice. I'm just stating a fact. You can't protect the Mu family forever in that courtyard with a protective array formation. If they want to live in Clearwater City, there will be a time when they have to leave the courtyard. The Shadowless race is only targeting the Shadowless race, not the Mu family, and you killed the people of Stargate. The people of Stargate are not easy to deal with. Bai Yetian waved his hand, and a token slowly fell in front of Mu Yu. Think about it yourself. When you have made up your mind, as long as you infuse your spiritual energy into this token, I will be able to detect it. I will tell you where to find me through this token. Then we can discuss it in detail. Bai Yetian took a last look at Mu Yu, and then a gust of yellow sand blew over, wrapping him in the night and disappearing. The token was black, and only 2 words were engraved on it, shadowless. There was nothing fancy about it, but it gave people a heavy feeling. Chapter 531. After returning to the Mu residence, Mu Tianhe and the others didn't sleep. They had been waiting for Mu Yu. When they saw Mu Yu's figure, they let out a sigh of relief. Mu Yu, you're back. That's great. Little Shin came back after you left. We wanted to inform you, but we were worried that we wouldn't be able to help, so. Mu Rongshuan said nervously. At this moment, Mu Shin was sleeping peacefully in his arms. Not long after Mu Yu left, Mu Shin fell asleep alone at the gate. It was Uncle Mu who heard someone knocking on the door and went out to check. He found her and brought her in. I'm fine. Little Shin should be fine, right? Mu Yu asked. Mu Yu placed his hand on Mu Shin's forehead and used the spirit force in his hand to circulate around Mu Shin's body. When he found that Mu Shin was safe and sound, he reluctantly believed Bai Yetian's words. She just fell asleep. I've seen her. She should wake up tomorrow morning, Cai Lai said. What the hell is going on? Is it really Shadow Killer Qingming? Mu Tianhe asked anxiously. Everyone looked at Mu Yu. They had more or less heard of how powerful Shadow Killer Qingming was and were very worried that something would happen to Mu Yu. But fortunately, Mu Yu came back safe and sound. Everyone's heart was finally put down. Mu Yu shook his head. It's not Shadow Killer Qingming. It's a young man. Have any of you heard of the Shadowless clan? The appearance of the Shadowless clan at night made Mu Yu very puzzled, especially what Bai Yetian said. There were some powerful forces hidden in the cultivation world, and the 8 gates didn't represent the entire cultivation world. It seemed that Mu Yu's knowledge of the cultivation world was still too little. Mu Tianhe and the others looked at each other. They were the same as Mu Yu. They had never heard of the so-called Shadowless clan. Even Cai Lai didn't know. But on the side, Master Lu suddenly exclaimed softly, "Are you talking about the Shadowless clan?" Everyone turned to look at Master Lu. Mu Yu nodded. Master Lu, do you know about the Shadowless clan? Lu Xianshe thought for a while and said, the Shadowless clan is a very strange organization. I once heard a member of the Shadowless Man mention it when I was helping Shun Shin Hall make a communication array. Master Lu, you really do business with anyone, Mu Yu said helplessly. Not only did Master Lu help the major sects to deal with the matter of arrays, but he also helped the million-dollar trading company to make the green jade that could reveal the whereabouts of the Supreme Immortals. He also helped the evil sect's casino to arrange the gambling array. He even helped the Shun Shin Hall, which belonged to the Silhouette being, to make a communication array. In Mu Yu's view, these forces were not good birds. A large part of Master Lu's business was helping the tyrant. However, Mu Yu certainly wouldn't blame him, because the Array faction originally relied on this to make money, just like how the Silhouette being made money by eliminating disasters for people. Master Lu smiled awkwardly. We don't refuse anyone. We only care about setting up arrays and collecting rewards. We don't care about the privacy of the customers. But then again, I did hear them mention something about the Shadowless clan. The Shadowless clan seems to be the sworn enemy of the Silhouette being. They specialize in destroying the business of the Silhouette being, especially the business of killing people. Master Lu pondered for a moment and continued, last time, I heard that a Shadowless killer was killed by the Shadowless clan, and the senior member of the Silhouette being was very angry. I'm quite curious. The Shadowless killer has always been very powerful, but he was still killed by someone. It's really amazing. They specialize in destroying the business of killing people. Why? Don't the people of the Shadowless clan like to kill people? Mu Yu felt that it was a little strange. I don't know, but I think this Shadowless clan might be trying to get compensation or something. If the assassination mission fails, they will have to pay double the compensation, right? Master Lu guessed. The Silhouette being had always accepted money from people to solve problems. In order to show that they were trustworthy, they set a rule that if the mission was not completed within the specified time, they would pay double the deposit to the customer. Killing people was very risky, and the higher the cultivation of the target, the more expensive it would be, and the higher the deposit would be. If the mission failed, the loss of the Shun Shin Hall would also be huge. The reason why the Silhouette being dared to set the compensation rule was that the Shadowless killers they sent were all very confident in their assassination. The most famous Shadowless killers were the 20 Solar Terms killers, but it did not mean that they only had 24 killers. The Silhouette being had countless Shadowless killers. It was just that the price to hire the 20 Solar Terms killers was quite expensive. Get compensation? It's quite interesting to make money from this aspect. According to what you said, if the Shadowless clan deliberately sent people to kill people, and then found a way to kill a certain Shadowless killer, they could indeed get compensation. But such a mysterious organization wouldn't be so bored as to do such a thing, would they? Mu Yu couldn't help but laugh. You're right. I remember that the senior leader of the Silhouette being said that the Shadowless clan was a very difficult bone to deal with. I think that if the Silhouette being thought that the Shadowless clan was a difficult bone to deal with, it would be impossible for them to just get compensation, right? The strength of the Shadowless clan is at least not weaker than the Silhouette being, Lu Xianxia continued. But even I have never heard of the Shadowless clan, Cai Lai said with a puzzled look. As an alchemist of the Danding sect, Cai Lai had heard a lot about the cultivation world. He knew a lot about the Silhouette being, but he had never heard of the Shadowless clan, which was very strange. Not only him, but Mu Yu had also never heard of the mysterious Shadowless clan before. If they were a force that even the Silhouette being was afraid of, why did so few people in the cultivation world know about their existence? Do any of you have information about the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard? Do you know what Bai Yetian's ranking is? Mu Yu asked again. Bai Yetian was about 20 years old, and his cultivation level was also at the spirit severing stage, so he must be one of the Supreme Immortals on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. I have this. This is the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard I bought when I came to Clearwater City a while ago. Cai Lai took out a long and narrow piece of white paper from his Heaven and Earth sleeve and handed it to Mu Yu. The information on the paper was extracted from the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard, and it only briefly introduced the ranking and origin of each Supreme Immortal. It was not as detailed as the green jade that Hui Beiya gave to Mu Yu, so it was not expensive. It was only about 10 spirit stones per piece, and it was signed with the ranking on May 10th. The ranking changed every day, so each piece of paper was marked with a date for reference, so the accuracy was not very high. Mu Yu looked at the name of the Supreme Immortal carefully, and he saw that his ranking was still at 80. This was because he had not killed Tian Kaiyu when Cai Lai bought the list. Ling Zheng, who had died a few months ago, was still at 67th place. This was because the Forbidden Art domain had destroyed the Supreme Immortal leaderboard. This situation was very rare, and the Supreme Immortal leaderboard could not change it. Then, he saw Bai Yetian's name. Bai Yetian's ranking was 93rd. Strange, Mu Yu muttered. The 93rd Supreme Immortal was very abnormal. Bai Yetian was at the spirit-severing stage at such a young age, so logically speaking, he should be in the top 60. However, he was only at 93rd place, which was obviously not right. One had to know that even Cai Lai, who was at the 5th firmament of the out-of-body stage, was ranked 84th. Bai Yetian was definitely much higher than Cai Lai, so it was impossible for him to be as low as 93rd place, unless he did it on purpose like Mu Yu. He even lost to others on purpose to lower his ranking. The introduction of Bai Yetian was only one simple word: itinerant cultivator. How dare he look for trouble with you at 93rd place? I already told you to let me deal with him. Cai Lai rubbed his hands together and said. He is at the spirit-severing stage, it's just that he didn't try to get on the leaderboard, Mu Yu explained. Cai Lai's hand stopped in mid-air, then he pretended that he didn't hear anything and said, then I'll deal with him later. He didn't do anything to you, right? Mu Tianhe asked with concern. He knew that Mu Yu was only at the out-of-body stage, so it was still too difficult for him to deal with a spirit-severing stage cultivator. Mu Yu smiled slightly. His strength had not been fully displayed in front of the people of the Mu family, and the people of the Mu family also didn't know much about Mu Yu. Don't worry, Grandpa, he didn't do anything to me. Mu Yu was more curious about this person from the Shadowless clan than Sikong Chiwen. There were not many people who could defeat the Shadowless clan. That's good, it's already so late, everyone should go and rest first. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Mu Tianhe looked at the night sky and found that it was already dawn, so he changed his mind and said, let's talk about it in the afternoon. Everyone nodded and went their separate ways. Mu Yu also returned to his room and lay on his bed, but there were still many things in his mind. From the rise of Sikong Chiwen to the huge scale of challenging Tian Bu Wait in Clearwater City, the whole thing had become very complicated. First of all, who was behind Sikong Chiwen? If one didn't have any background and dared to openly provoke the heavens, the tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. How could Sikong Chiwen not understand this logic? Or was he so arrogant that he thought he could really defeat all the people who came to challenge him? One had to know that Sikong Chiwen was a person who had advanced by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. This kind of person would definitely attract a lot of attention. Everyone wanted to know the secret of his rapid increase in cultivation from him. Did Sikong Chiwen really think he could keep it a secret? Since Bai Yetian was from the Shadowless clan, then what he said at night shouldn't be false. Indeed, Shadow Killer Qing Ming didn't come to Clearwater City to kill Sikong Chiwen or Tian Bu Wait because of the gambling incident. Instead, he was sent by Stargate to kill Mu Yu. But this was not the point. The point was that Mu Yu found that what Bai Yetian said was right. If Shadow Killer Qing Ming and Bai Yetian used the Mu family as hostages to force Mu Yu to submit, then what would Mu Yu do then? The Mu family didn't leave the compound. With the protection array set up by Mu Yu, they could completely resist outsiders. Even Shadow Killer Qing Ming couldn't sneak in quietly. However, the Mu family couldn't hide here forever. Mu Yu carefully observed the Shadowless token. Things were getting weirder and weirder these days. The sudden appearance of the Shadowless clan made things more and more confusing. Clearwater City was well known in the cultivation world because of the rise of Sikong Chiwen. Sikong Chiwen also set off a storm in the cultivation world because he wanted to challenge Tian Bu Wait and the disciple of the true god. It attracted a lot of people to watch the battle between these three genius extreme immortals. Now, Clearwater City was filled with all kinds of self-cultivators. It had become one of the most prosperous cities in the 3 continents. Under this bustling city, There were a few undercurrents surging restlessly, each brewing a conspiracy. Sikong Chiwen, whose cultivation had skyrocketed in a short period of time, seemed to be the key to the whole thing, and Mu Yu became the stumbling block that others wanted to get rid of. Mu Yu checked the Extreme Immortal leaderboard. The top 50 Extreme Immortals and the bottom 50 Extreme Immortals were two different concepts. It could be said that it was a watershed. He remembered very clearly that among his fellow disciples, Cheng Yang was ranked 50th, Luo Shong was ranked 39th, Xiong Nan was ranked 76th, and Lanling was ranked 81st. Now, Cheng Yang was ranked 37th, Luo Shong was 36th, Lanling was still 81st, and Xiong Nan. Mu Yu suddenly sat up on his bed. Why was Xiong Nan ranked 9th? Chapter 532. Mu Yu was shocked. Mu Yu would not be surprised if Luo Shong or Cheng Yang made it to the top 9. Cheng Yang was a very steady person with great talent. However, he had been cultivating in the Moyun mountain range, where the spirit qi was scarce, so his cultivation speed was slower than Luo Shong's. As for Luo Shong, even though Mu Yu did not like his second senior brother, it was an undeniable fact that Luo Shong's talent was not inferior to Mu Yu's. However, the usually honest Xiong Nan was only ranked 76th at the start. Now, he had surpassed his first senior brother and second senior brother, and even made it to the 9th place. The top 9 Extreme Immortals were the leaders of the human war. All humans had to listen to their orders. Every Extreme Immortal's goal was to become one of the top 9 Extreme Immortals. Mu Yu had never expected the well-behaved Xiong Nan to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat and successfully become the 9th Supreme Immortal. What the hell is going on? One had to know that Tian Buling, who was ranked 50th, and Sikong Chiwen, who was ranked 51st, were both at the 6th celestial stage of the spirit severing stage. This meant that the top 50 Extreme Immortals were at least at the spirit severing stage. Mu Yu could accept that both Luo Shong and Cheng Yang were at the spirit severing stage. However, Mu Yu had the impression that the honest Xiong Nan was a lazy person. If he could make it to the 9th place, his strength might not be as simple as being at the spirit severing stage. When the 9 Heavens Demon Sealing formation was activated, Spirit Lord Tu Yumeng in Xiong Nan's body was not sealed. Did something happen to Xiong Nan? A few thoughts flashed through Mu Yu's mind. The only person who did not succeed in the 9 Heavens Demon Sealing formation was Xiong Nan. Back then, Spirit Lord Tu Yumeng had taken the initiative to return control of Xiong Nan's body to him. Xie Bulao had wanted to kill Xiong Nan, but his master, Feng Haochen, had stopped him. Xie Bulao had also forbidden Xiong Nan from leaving the 50-mile garden. If Xiong Nan wanted to defeat all the Extreme Immortals in front of him and enter the 9th place, he would have to leave the 50-mile garden in the south. How did he escape Xie Bulao's surveillance? Eerie Shadow Everlasting was an immortal existence like Jian Ying and Chen Feng. Their cultivations were extremely frightening, and even the 5 spirit lords Yumeng were extremely wary of him. It was almost impossible for Xiong Nan to escape from under Xie Yolao's nose, so what had happened? Could it be that Xiong Nan had secretly escaped when Xie Bulao left the 50-mile garden? Is Xiong Nan really under Hutu's control? If it weren't for the fact that Mu Yu had a lot of things to do, he would have immediately gone to the 50-mile garden in the south to ask Cheng Yang about the situation. Right now, not only was he being targeted by Ying Shuo and Qing Ming, but he was also being targeted by Ren Tian. The safety of the Mu family was not guaranteed, either. He could not leave Clearwater City. Senior Xiong Nan, please don't let anything happen to you. Mu Yu had a bad feeling about this. More and more bad things were happening. The only thing that gave Mu Yu hope was that soon, the 9 Qi soul-cleansing flower's death aura would not be able to suppress the vitality of the netherworld grass. When that happened, his master would be able to recover his cultivation and clean up all the mess. Master should be able to think of a way to solve Xiong Nan's problem, right? Mu Yu could only try his best to think positively. The sun had risen a long time ago. It was one day closer to the 6th day of the 6th month. After Mu Xin woke up, everyone asked her what happened yesterday. Unfortunately, Mu Xin could not remember anything. She only said that she was looking at clothes in the tailor's shop before falling asleep. Everyone could only let it go. Yu told everyone from the Mu family not to leave the Mu mansion for the next few days. All business outside was temporarily suspended. There were less than 6 days left until the 6th day of the 6th month. Ying Shuo and Qing Ming were still hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Ying Shuo and Qing Ming were the gatemaster of Stargate. Tian Yuhen was worried about his son's safety, so he chose to pay a huge price to ask Ying Shuo and Qing Ming to kill Mu Yu. Mu Yu was not surprised by Stargate's shameless actions. On one hand, they were helping his son build momentum. On the other hand, they were helping his son get rid of the dissidents. If Tian Yuhen had helped Tian Yuhen in the dark in the past, then Mu Yu would look down on Tian Yuhen. Not only did the 8 Gates team up to help Tian Yuhen, but Tian Yuhen was also helping him. This so-called battle between two immortals disgusted Mu Yu. If Mu Yu wanted to kill Tian Yuhen, Ying Shuo and Qing Ming would definitely come out to stop him. Since that was the case, Mu Yu planned to get rid of Ying Shuo and Qing Ming first. Mu Yu didn't want to sit still and wait for death. He planned to take the initiative to attack. If I can't even defeat Ying Shuo and Qing Ming, then it's even more impossible to kill Tian Yuhen. Mu Yu said to himself. As for the Shadowless clan, whose goal was to destroy the silhouette being, he didn't trust them, nor did he want to rely on them. Are you really going to do this? That's the famous assassin Ying Shuo and Qing Ming. Master Lu was a little worried. Although Mu Yu told him the plan, he was still not at ease. Don't worry. It's not certain who will sweep whose grave on the Qingming festival next year. Mu Yu's eyes revealed a rare fierce light. Just follow my plan. Mu Yu was the gate master of Formation Glyph Gate, and he relied on more than just his own cultivation. Okay then. I'll go with Sichu Yangtian, you have to be careful. Master Lu hesitated for a moment, then hurriedly left the Mu mansion. There were only 5 days left before the competition, but Mu Yu had already left the Mu mansion alone during the day, leaving Clearwater City under the watchful eyes of the public. His appearance attracted the attention of many people. After all, whether it was the Sikong family, the Mu mansion, or the mansion where Tian Yuhen lived, it was inevitable that there would be people secretly spying on them. Many people were very interested in the whereabouts of the 3 genius supreme immortals. Therefore, when Mu Yu left Clearwater City for less than a quarter of an hour, the news had already spread. Why did the true god's disciple leave Clearwater City at this time? Could it be that he felt that he was no match for Tian Yuhen and Sikong Chiwen, so he decided to give up this competition? It shouldn't be that simple. Let's go and see. Many meddlesome self-cultivators secretly followed behind Mu Yu. However, Mu Yu's figure had already disappeared into the vast yellow sand after leaving Clearwater City. No one knew where he had gone. The true god's disciple actually ran away. This was everyone's guess. Clearwater City was surrounded by a barren desert, and it was the only oasis in the desert. In the desert, if one did not have a guide or someone who knew the way, it was easy to get lost. Although cultivators could be crippled, even an out-of-body stage cultivator would need 2 days and 2 nights to fly out of this desert. A round trip would take at least 4 days and 4 nights. There were less than 5 days left before the competition. Mu Yu's disappearance from Clearwater City in the desert was obviously an escape. Isn't he too spineless? Running away at this time? In an instant, the Clearwater City cultivators who came to watch the competition discussed among themselves. They felt that Mu Yu had damaged the dignity of a true god. That might not be the case. He could have just gone to the desert to gain enlightenment. I spent 1,000 spirit stones on him winning. If he ran away at the last minute, wouldn't that mean that my 1,000 spirit stones were wasted? Oh my god. I took a risk and decided to bet on him winning. If I had known, I would have bet on Sikong Chiwen winning. Haha. Are you dumbfounded? I spent 10,000 spirit stones on Sikong Chiwen winning in the end. Why do I feel that the odds of winning are higher if you bet on heaven is not waiting? I heard that the 8 gates are on Sikong Chiwen's side. Mu Yu has potential, but he's not there yet. Anyway, if you want to win money, you can't bet on him. What made everyone feel strange was that after Mu Yu left Clearwater City, the Mu mansion was still very quiet. There was no movement, and no Mu family members appeared in front of the cultivators. Many people knew that the Mu mansion could not be broken into. Therefore, they did not understand what had happened to the Mu family. Could it be that Mu Yu had just returned to the Mu family and abandoned his family? In a dark corner, a shadow stood quietly. Finally out. The shadow seemed to be talking to itself. Then, it slowly disappeared into the corner. In the desert. The scorching sun roasted the yellow sand, giving off steam as if it wanted to melt the sand. The layers of sand dunes were like waves, rising and falling high. Occasionally, there would be some severely weathered sandstones in the desert. They were weird and rugged, standing upright in the sun. At this moment, Mu Yu was sitting cross-legged on a towering sandstone. He held his breath and cultivated, absorbing the spirit qi in the desert. Even the spirit qi in the desert was extremely hot. If he could not calm this heat, even if he absorbed it into his body, it would cause anxiety and affect his cultivation. However, the falling dust mantra emphasized one's state of mind, so he was able to successfully remove this strand of heat. Mu Yu was sitting cross-legged on the sandstone with an anti-heat formation. It could isolate the heat outside. At this moment, little Shuai was leisurely lying on the ground, munching on a watermelon. This watermelon was grown by Mu Yu using his spirit qi. The dragon vine was coiled around Mu Yu's hand, cultivating along with Mu Yu's would attribute spirit qi. The dragon vine was now in the out-of-body stage. It had learned a lot about formations from Mu Yu. It could successfully transform its breath into the dragon vine howling sky sword formation. Its power was not to be underestimated. As for little Shuai, who only knew how to eat all day, no one knew what its cultivation was. In any case, it looked pretty good when it used little Shuai's mysterious lightning fall. It even personally took care of talisman grandmasters Jiang Xiangdi. The reason Mu Yu came here alone was to settle things with Shadow Killer Ming Ming. His cultivation might not be as good as Shadow Killer Ming Ming, but in a real fight, Mu Yu had countless tricks up his sleeve. Since Stargate's Gate Master Tian Yuhen had no confidence in his son, Mu Yu would make his worries come true. Mu Yu cultivated under the sun for an entire day. No one came to disturb him. Night soon fell. The moon hung in the sky, illuminating the entire desert. During the day, there were still rolling waves of heat, but at night, there was a slight chill. The temperature difference between day and night was quite large. During the day, the temperature was 60 to 70 degrees Celsius, but at night, it was only around 10 degrees. The wind blew the yellow sand into the air, making rustling sounds as it danced in the air. Suddenly, a floating pulsatilla flew over under the night sky. The pulsatilla's clear cry was refreshing in the desert. The pulsatilla's appearance in the desert was very abrupt. It also made the desert look a little strange. Mu Yu looked up at the pulsatilla soaring under the moonlight and asked calmly, "The pulsatilla is a daoist bird of immortality. It is said to be a symbol of longevity. Why did it become a symbol of Ming Ming Ming? It's called return to heaven." The pulsatilla flew gracefully. Under the moonlight, its shadow constantly shuttled back and forth among the sand dunes. After the shadow shuttled to the sand in front of Mu Yu, it stopped moving. Then, a human figure slowly emerged from the pulsatilla's shadow. "Isn't it about time to return to heaven when your hair turns white?" The human figure slowly said. His entire body was hidden in the shadows. Even the moonlight couldn't clearly reveal his face. It was as if he was a pure shadow, making people feel very uncomfortable. Chapter 533. Mu Yu slowly stood up. "Well said, I have to kill you in order to give me peace, right?" Mu Yu slowly stood up. He didn't sense any cultivation fluctuations from Qing Ming's body. It was as if he was just an ordinary shadow with nothing special about him. However, he sensed danger from this inconspicuous shadow. "No." The shadow suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with killing intent. They were like ice that hadn't melted in 1,000 years. They were emotionless and chilling. Mu Yu raised his eyebrows. "I'm the one who's going to kill you," Qing Ming said calmly. A monstrous killing intent swept through the yellow sand. It was cold and austere. The sand didn't seem to be floating anymore. The air became heavy and time seemed to have stopped. In the face of Qing Ming's killing intent, Mu Yu didn't move. He knew that Qing Ming's ranking on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard was higher than Tian Buqi. This meant that Qing Ming had the power of a severed soul stage cultivator. Qing Ming wasn't an idiot like Tian Kaiyu. Mu Yu wouldn't underestimate him. I thought you really did escape from Clearwater City like they said, Qing Ming said. Mu Yu looked at him but didn't reply. Qing Ming continued, I'm very curious about you. Why is an out-of-body stage cultivator like you so calm in front of me? Are you prepared to celebrate your death anniversary next year? Are all Shadow Slayers chatterboxes? Mu Yu asked. Qing Ming let out a strange sound. It sounded like he was laughing, but it was very unpleasant. I don't usually like to talk nonsense with my targets. However, you're a true God's disciple. That's why I reluctantly said a few words. I heard that a true God's disciple is the one who can create miracles. However, this miracle might end tonight, Qing Ming said. A sharp whistling sound came from afar. Under the cover of the night, 2 black chi blades slashed toward Mu Yu. You said it too. It's just a maybe. The runes under Mu Yu's feet flickered and he disappeared. The sand under his feet had been reduced to dust by the black chi blades. Xiao Shuai was lying on Mu Yu's shoulder with a piece of watermelon in his hand. A quarter of an hour. If you can last 15 minutes against me, I'll turn around and leave. I'll consider this business deal a failure. Shadowslay's clear tone carried a hint of mockery. He did indeed have the right to be arrogant. As an extreme celestial who was ranked 43 on the extreme celestial rankings, his cultivation was rather terrifying, and he had taken the lives of countless people. No matter how formidable the disciple of a god might be, he was still only at the leaving aperture realm. There was no way he would be able to do anything to Zhongxian. A quarter of an hour. Mu Yu's eyes reflected black and white light under the cold moonlight. The people I want to kill have never lasted more than 15 minutes in my hand. Qing Ming was still a shadow, but his hand was already raised. A streak of black spiritual power shot up into the sky and hit the pulsatilla that was soaring in the air. Then, the pulsatilla suddenly turned black, and it split into two into 4. In the blink of an eye, 16 pulsatilla appeared under the moonlight. At this moment, the 16 pulsatilla Wang had once again revealed 16 shadows under the moonlight. The pulsatilla Wang began to dance around Mu Yu, and the shadows on the ground also intertwined around Mu Yu from time to time. One of the pulsatilla's shadows rapidly attacked Mu Yu. When Mu Yu saw that ordinary shadow, a strong sense of danger surged in his heart. He had already leaped into the air. At the same time, a human figure emerged from the shadow that was approaching him. It was Shadowslay Qing Ming. The sharp black light in Qing Ming's hand flashed as he attacked Mu Yu. Almost in the blink of an eye, Mu Yu's figure disappeared and dodged Qing Ming's killing blow. Shadowslay Qing Ming relied on shadows to kill people. He could freely switch his figure among the 16 pulsatilla's shadows. Once Mu Yu was approached by the 16 pulsatilla's shadows, he would be greeted by Shadowslay Qing Ming's fatal attack. The 16 pulsatilla's speed was quite fast. Even among the spirit-severing stage self-cultivators, there might not be anyone faster than them. They flew quickly in the sky, and their shadows under the moonlight were also very fast, rushing towards Mu Yu. However, Mu Yu's speed was not slow either. His Big Dipper constellation formation flashed from time to time, making these shadows completely unable to get close to him. The terrifying killing intent pervaded the surroundings, sweeping through every shadow. Every shadow in the desert was exuding a cold and austere chill. Mu Yu understood that just by relying on the speed of his cultivation base, he would not be able to avoid the pursuit of these 16 pulsatilla shadows. Fortunately, he had a very powerful Big Dipper constellation formation technique, so avoiding these 16 pulsatilla shadows was not a problem at all. Shadow hiding technique is a compulsory course for every Shadowslay, so wherever there are shadows, it is my battlefield. Shadowslay Qing Ming said coldly. His figure quickly came out from behind Mu Yu. Mu Yu's heart was slightly startled. His whole body was already flying in the air, and at the same time, he rushed towards the pulsatilla. The pulsatilla's shadow hiding technique was what Shadowslay relied on. As long as he killed these 16 pulsatilla, he should be able to break Shadowslay's shadow hiding technique. The sword light reflected the moonlight, looking very cold. The sharp sword chi instantly shot out. The sword light cut through the lonely cold moon and chopped towards the pulsatilla. However, the 16 pulsatilla easily dodged Mu Yu's shadow swords. Their speed was not the slightest bit slower than Mu Yu's. Shadowslay Qingming was tailing Mu Yu from behind. Suddenly, he rushed out from the shadow under Mu Yu's body. Mu Yu's feet touched the ground again. The formation runes surged, and he disappeared in the air. What a powerful shadow! Mu Yu couldn't help but praise this terrifying stealth technique. Shadowslay could use the shadows to change his position at will. He could even use the opponent's shadow. This kind of movement method was very close to his Big Dipper constellation formation. This was especially true for people whose assassination speed was not as fast as Shadowslay. There was basically no way to dodge. A walker in the shadows, all the shadows were his battlefield. This was Shadowslay. No wonder every Shadowslay was so frightening. Once you were targeted, it was impossible to guard against them in the night. You had to be alert at all times. Otherwise, a sharp blade would suddenly appear from the shadow under your feet. If Mu Yu didn't have the Big Dipper constellation formation that was not weaker than Shadowslay's shadow stealth technique, he would definitely be at a disadvantage with such a large gap in strength. Mu Yu turned around. The shadow swords left his hands. With a mysterious sword force, they split into 9 and then merged into the vast void around Mu Yu. His whole body became incomparably ethereal and light, like a leisurely cloud, floating in the desert sky. Shadowslay Qingming had already appeared from the shadow below him. A black shadow blade chopped towards Mu Yu. Mu Yu's right hand grasped the void. The formation runes around him rippled. The shadow swords were pulled out from the void by him and met Shadowslay Qingming's black shadow blade. The sword light swallowed and spat out, and a tyrannical aura swept out. The sword chi and the blade light burst forth with intense and pure brilliance under the moonlight, bombarding the desert sky. The majestic spiritual energy instantly blasted the sand dune under his feet into a terrifying pit. Mu Yu retreated a few steps before he could barely stabilize himself. However, the shadow of a pulsatilla just happened to envelop him. Shadowslay Qingming drilled out from the pulsatilla's shadow, and a murderous shadow blade flashed past, cutting a huge wound on his back. Mu Yu's figure flashed and disappeared. Fortunately, he did so. Otherwise, this shadow blade would have split him in half. In the end, Mu Yu suffered a disadvantage in terms of cultivation. He and Shadowslay Qingming's cultivation were an entire realm apart. In this kind of situation, it was impossible to fight force with force. Not only did the shadow blade create a wound on Mu Yu's back, it also invaded a tyrannical spiritual energy, constantly destroying the veins in Mu Yu's body. Shadowslay Qingming appeared a distance away from Mu Yu, but he did not continue to attack. To be able to dodge our Shadowslay's shadow concealment technique, your cultivation and speed must be above mine. How can you, a 9th celestial layer out-of-body cultivator, move so quickly? Shadowslay Qingming asked in surprise. If you want to kill me with the shadow concealment technique, I'm afraid that 15 minutes won't be enough. Mu Yu was too lazy to explain anything. Ordinary array masters who used the Big Dipper constellation formation would be exhausted after 2 or 3 times. However, Mu Yu clearly did not have this restriction. He had the chaotic yin and yang in his body, which could provide him with an endless supply of spiritual energy to use the formation. In addition, the Big Dipper constellation formation was combined with the Dustfall steps, so it could be used at will and not randomly appear. Therefore, he was able to dodge Shadowslay Qingming's shadow concealment technique. 15 minutes is enough. My shadow blade will scatter when it touches blood and scatter into all the blood and organs in your body. I'm different from other Shadowslays. My shadow blade can control people. Shadowslay Qingming slowly extended a finger. Mu Yu was shocked. He felt a sudden surge of powerful spiritual energy in his body. That spiritual energy did not belong to him at all, but it occupied his meridians and controlled his body. He involuntarily followed Shadow's Lei Qingming and extended a finger, pointing at his opponent. If you're injured by my shadow blade, you'll become my shadow puppet. You'll have to follow my movements. Shadow's Lei Qingming extended his right hand. A ball of rapidly spinning black spiritual energy appeared in his hand, mixed with an incomparably terrifying destructive power. Mu Yu also extended his right hand, but nothing appeared in his hand. Shadow's Lei Qingming was controlling his body, but that did not mean that he could gather the same spiritual energy as Shadow's Lei Qingming. Shadow's Lei Qingming waved his hand and the black spiritual energy in his hand flew towards Mu Yu. That ball of black spiritual energy enlarged in front of Mu Yu's eyes and instantly hit Mu Yu's chest, sending Mu Yu flying. He crashed into a sand dune, stirring up yellow sand all over the sky. Mu Yu lay at the bottom of the sand dune and spat out the blood in his mouth. Sure enough, it was too much for an out-of-body stage cultivator to face the 43rd extreme immortal. Shadow's Lei Qingming appeared beside Mu Yu. The 16 pulsatilla in the sky circled around Mu Yu. The pulsatilla's shadow covered Mu Yu's entire body. The shadow was like a cage, trapping Mu Yu on the ground, making it impossible for Mu Yu to break free. I have 16 pulsatilla. The speed of these 16 pulsatilla is not slower than a severed soul stage cultivator. I don't mind telling you, these 16 pulsatilla are all cultivators known for their speed, including 2 extreme immortals. When I approve of the target's speed, I'll use the shadow puppet technique to refine them into my pulsatilla, making them a part of my battle. You should be honored that I've also taken a fancy to your speed. You have the qualifications to become my pulsatilla. Shadow's Lei Qingming said indifferently. From beginning to end, apart from those emotionless eyes, Shadow's Lei Qingming's entire body was just a shadow. Even though he was so close to Mu Yu could not see his exact appearance. Chapter 534. Mu Yu's flesh and blood were being eaten away by the strange force, but the black and white spirit power in his dantian had already gushed out and spread all over his meridians, wrapping around the wounds that had been eaten away and healing them. At the same time, the spirit energy created by the shadow blade was also being devoured by the black and white energy in his body. There are so many people who want to kill me, you definitely won't be the last. Mu Yu's eyes darkened, a green formation pattern suddenly lit up in his hand. Little Handsome's mysterious lightning fall. A childish voice came from not far away, thunder suddenly rumbled in the air, followed by blue sparks flickering, a huge blue sword more than 100 feet long slashed down from the sky. The pulsatilla quickly scattered, the shadow cage trapping Mu Yu also broke by itself. At the same time the tyrannical sword shadow whistled, exploding where Shadow Killer Qingming was standing. But Shadow Killer Qingming had already disappeared. Little Handsome had one hand on his waist, the other pointing to the sky, his small claws nimbly controlling the blue lightning sword that was many times taller than him, swinging it in the air, full of vigor. The formation pattern under Mu Yu's feet lightly moved, landing outside the sand pit. The 16 return to heavens had already scattered. Shadow Killer Qingming slowly appeared under the shadow of the return to heavens not far from Mu Yu, saying, "True God's disciple truly lives up to his name, to actually be able to escape my shadow puppet's control." The wound on Mu Yu's chest had already healed, he panted slightly. Ever since the black and white spirit energy in his body was infected by the underworld grass life energy and death energy, he didn't know if it was good or bad. But it couldn't be denied that these two completely different spirit energies were always able to save him at the right time. "Hiding bastard, Little Handsome is here to take care of you." Little Handsome's large sword swung twice in the air, a blue light illuminating the entire desert. Mu Yu looked at the bright moon in the sky. Every shadow killer had learned this terrifying shadow hiding technique. No wonder they were so efficient when killing people, and rarely missed. Because there was light, there was a shadow. But what if there was no light? "Little Commander, come back," Mu Yu said in his heart. The wind-wind heart-linking formation connected Little Shuai and Mu Yu together. Both parties knew what they were thinking at this moment. Little Shuai reluctantly put away his huge sword and jumped back into Mu Yu's arms. Mu Yu's fingers flickered, and array patterns shot out from his hand. Then, a black cloud suddenly floated in the sky, and instantly covered the bright moonlight. The entire desert was plunged into darkness, and no one could see each other. Qingming Shadow Kill laughed coldly and said, "You are too naive. Without light, the darkness is just a huge shadow to me. You can't blame me if you want to die." Shadow Killer, as the name suggested, was an assassin who hid in the shadows. They preferred to move out at night and could only rely on their shadows to kill during the day. Every shadow killer had their own method of creating shadows. Qingming relied on the incomparably fast pulsatilla to assassinate his opponent. Once there was no light, the world would fall into darkness, and that would be the time for Shadow Killer to move unhindered. Mu Yu used the formation to create a huge black cloud to cover the bright moon, but it was also equivalent to creating the best battle conditions for Qingming Shadow Kill. Qingming Shadow Kill's eyes flickered with a cold light in the darkness. He didn't need to rely on the pulsatilla to move, and his battle strength would increase by another level. He was a person who lived in the darkness, and his vision wasn't affected. He could clearly see Mu Yu's position. His figure moved, and he already appeared beside Mu Yu. Then, the shadow blade in his hand once again slashed towards Mu Yu. "Is that so?" Mu Yu snorted. A dazzling white light suddenly burst out from Mu Yu's body and enveloped his whole body. Mu Yu's whole body was like a bright sun, dispersing the surrounding darkness. Qingming Shadow Kill's expression suddenly changed, and his whole body retreated. The pulsatilla promptly blocked in front of him, and used Mu Yu's white light to create a shadow, allowing Qingming Shadow Kill to stabilize his body. An assassin in the dark, is he so afraid of light? The dazzling light around Mu Yu's body was created by the formation, and this light was completely released, but it didn't affect him at all. The formation under his feet flickered, and he teleported in front of the pulsatilla, dispersing the shadow created by the pulsatilla, and Qingming Shadow Kill also disappeared. The 16 pulsatilla scattered, and as long as they were a certain distance away from Mu Yu, they could use the light from Mu Yu's body to create a shadow. Mu Yu's guess was right. Qingming Shadow Kill had a powerful shadow stealth technique, and he could appear and disappear unpredictably from his own shadow, and even in the dark night, his speed was even faster. However, this caused his cultivation technique to have the disadvantage of being afraid of light. He could only hide in the shadows, and couldn't directly receive any light. In places where there was light, he could only use his shadow to assassinate his opponent, but once the shadow was dispelled by the light, it would be his turn to escape. Where there is light, there is darkness. You are still too inexperienced to defeat me. Qingming Shadow Kill was a bit angry. He had never suffered a loss from his shadow stealth technique before. As long as there was a shadow, whether it was day or night, he could easily take the target's life from the shadow. However, Mu Yu was an array master, and the most powerful thing about array masters was that they had all kinds of array masters. Some array masters might not have any lethality, but they could perfectly restrain Qingming Shadow Kill's shadow stealth technique. When Mu Yu used himself as a light source, Qingming Shadow Kill could no longer approach Mu Yu, because Mu Yu himself couldn't create a shadow. Where there is light, there is darkness. You are right. Mu Yu's right hand surged with white spirit power, and then he hit the desert ground with his palm. With his right hand as the center, the formation pattern quickly spread out, and the mysterious formation pattern intertwined to form a barrier, instantly trapping all 16 pulsatilla wongs in his array formation barrier. The pulsatilla wongs rushed toward the barrier, wanting to escape from Mu Yu's barrier, but the barrier surged with majestic formation patterns, blocking the pulsatilla wongs. This place was full of formation bases, and there were hidden formations that had yet to be activated. They were secretly set up by Master Lu and Sichu Yangtian to help Mu Yu deal with Qingming Shadow Kill. Qingming Shadow Kill snorted coldly. You want to trap me with this array formation barrier? You are underestimating me. All the pulsatilla wongs gathered together and used the light emitted by Mu Yu to create a shadow, approaching the array formation barrier. Qingming Shadow Kill had already stretched out the shadow blade in his hand, and the shadow blade erupted with powerful spirit power. He was confident that he could break Mu Yu's array formation barrier. However, at this moment, he felt that something was wrong. With his many years of assassination experience, he immediately took out a piece of black cloth from his hand without hesitation and blocked in front of his eyes. His approach was correct, because the 16 pulsatilla wangs were suddenly wrapped in a strong light, and their original shadows dissipated. The pulsatilla wangs were also turned into light sources by Mu Yu's formation pattern, and Qingming Shadowkill's speed no longer had any advantage. The formation pattern in Mu Yu's hand emitted mysterious inscriptions, firmly attached to the 16 pulsatilla wangs, turning them into 16 light sources, and all of a sudden, Qingming Shadowkill's hidden shadow technique was ineffective. Qingming Shadowkill used a piece of black cloth to block in front of him. He stood in the shadow of the black cloth, and his heart was furious to the extreme. I didn't expect that the one who could force me to this point was actually an array formation master. Qingming Shadowkill's voice was very cold. Although array formation masters were very powerful, they were famous for their weakness. He had killed some array formation masters before, but those array formation masters were never as fast as Mu Yu. If he underestimated an array formation master, he wouldn't even know how he died. Mu Yu's hand once again transformed into countless formation patterns, fusing them into the formation barrier around him. Then, the formation barrier he created suddenly emitted a terrifying light, instantly dispersing the shadows created by Qingming Shadowkill using the black cloth. Anything that shined light would produce shadows, but once the light was too bright, it could fade the shadows created by objects. And shadows that weren't dark enough couldn't be used as a foothold for the hidden shadow technique. Bastard! Qingming Shadowkill roared. He was originally just a shadow hiding in all kinds of shadows. But his shadow was suddenly exposed under the light, and his entire shadow began to tremble violently. Countless shadows were dispelled from Qingming Shadowkill's body, as if shadow fragments were forcibly peeled off from his body, finally revealing his original appearance. It was a skinny young man with a pale complexion. The paleness made it seem like he had never seen the sun since he was born. There was no trace of blood on his face, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he was dead. Qingming Shadowkill was wearing a black outfit. He was perfectly fine after the shadow fragments on his body were dispelled by the light. He stood opposite Mu Yu with a cold expression. Ever since I became a Shadowkill, no one has ever seen my true appearance. You're the first one, Qingming Shadowkill said with a murderous look. Assassins who hid in the dark only liked to kill with the hidden shadow technique, but it didn't mean he was afraid of light. Mu Yu had used his formation to force Qingming Shadowkill to reveal his true appearance, so he no longer needed to rely on the shadows to move around. Without the shadows, I believe you're a lot weaker, Mu Yu said. Even if I don't rely on the shadows, it's more than enough to kill you. 2 black daggers appeared in Qingming Shadow's hands. These 2 daggers were the 2 incomparably sharp shadow blades from just now. It was just that without the support of the shadows, their original appearance was revealed. The shadow blades flew out of his hands, and sharp spiritual power burst out, instantly shattering the formation barrier created by Mu Yu, causing all the light to dissipate. Mu Yu's gaze turned cold. After all, Qingming Shadowkill was at the spirit-severing stage. Even if his hidden shadow technique was broken, his cultivation was still very strong, and he couldn't be underestimated. Qingming's shadow blade slashed at him from a tricky angle. Mu Yu leaped up to meet it, and the formation ripples on his body rippled. He pulled out the shadow-cloned sword in the air and collided with the shadow blade. However, the power of a spirit-severing stage attack was quite terrifying, and it instantly sent the shadow-cloned sword in Mu Yu's hand flying. Mu Yu didn't panic. He just turned around and pulled out another shadow-cloned sword from the void to deflect the power of the shadow blade. Qingming Shadow's strength was too strong. If Mu Yu wanted to fight Qingming Shadow, he could only use the formation of the 9 guiding heavenly sword to deflect the opponent's power. Otherwise, if they fought head-on, the one who would be injured would definitely be Mu Yu. However, at this moment, Qingming Shadow suddenly stopped. He frowned and said, 15 minutes is up. At the beginning, Qingming Shadow had said that if Mu Yu could last 15 minutes in his hands, he would treat this assassination mission as a failure. From the beginning until now, Mu Yu had been entangled with Qingming Shadow for exactly 15 minutes. I'll let you live for a few days. This mission will be considered a failure. Qingming Shadow snorted coldly. You don't plan to kill me? Mu Yu mocked. There's no need for me to do anything. Tian Buy will kill you. It's rare for the 8 sects to join forces to help Tian Buy. His strength is not what it used to be. Qingming's shadow glanced at Mu Yu disdainfully and turned to leave. However, the surroundings suddenly surged with powerful formation ripples again, enveloping Qingming's shadow. You don't plan to kill me, but I plan to kill you, Mu Yu said calmly. His eyes flickered with black and white light. The biting cold killing intent was like a torrential river that instantly filled the entire formation. Mu Yu didn't like people always looking at him with a self-righteous gaze. Chapter 535. The wind and sand in the desert continued to wreak havoc, bringing with it a slight chill. The ground was already crisscrossed with ravines. The destruction caused by the 2 powerful cultivators was too horrible to look at. Shadow Killer Qingming turned around and stared at Mu Yu as if he had heard a very funny joke. He sneered, "You want to kill me?" He had always been the one to kill others. No one had ever wanted to kill him. "I hate being threatened, and I hate people who think too highly of themselves even more. If you want to kill me, then I'll kill you." Mu Yu waved his hand, and formation runes rippled out. He had never liked killing people, but after experiencing so many things, he understood that being merciful to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. He never planned on letting Qingming live from the start. "You're just an out-of-body stage formation master? You think you're worthy?" Shadow Killer Qingming sneered. "I have a question. Does Tian Yuhen often pay you a high price to help Tian Bu waiting get rid of dissidents?" Mu Yu asked with interest. Shadow Killer looked at Mu Yu. "I'm only in charge of receiving money." "Then he is." Mu Yu despised Tian Buy to the extreme. Every time Tian Buy wanted to fight other extreme immortals, Shadow's Lei Qingming would secretly help him. What a disgusting deal. "I don't understand one thing. Why didn't the 8 gates ask you to kill Sikong Chiwen?" Mu Yu asked. Shadow Killer remained silent. "I understand. You don't have the confidence to deal with Sikong Chiwen." Mu Yu's eyes flashed with black and white formation runes. "Different people have different prices. It's not that we don't have confidence, but that no one can afford to kill Sikong Chiwen." A black shadow blade appeared in Shadow Killer Qingming's pale hands again. The surrounding yellow sand suddenly exploded, and powerful formation runes formed a pillar of light that shot into the sky, forming a huge 8 trigrams that trapped Shadow Killer Qingming and Mu Yu inside. Mu Yu had already asked Master Lu to lay down many powerful trapping formations in this desert. These formations were originally fixed formations, but Mu Yu had a powerful treasure like the primal chaos yin and yang. He could forcibly move all the fixed formations to his feet. Every array master couldn't set up a powerful fixed array in a short period of time other than their own array techniques. Even Mu Yu, who had the chaos yin and yang, couldn't do it. He could only set up a powerful array technique with the help of the array hall and the array runestone. The power of a fixed array formation was much stronger than that of a shift array formation cast by an array master. If he wanted to defeat Mu Yu, who had a much higher cultivation level than Mu Yu, he had no choice but to rely on a fixed array formation. Mu Yu let Master Lu come to this desert to set up the array, not only because Master Lu had much more experience in setting up arrays than him, but more importantly, he knew that Shadow Killer Qingming must have been spying on his every move near the Mu residence. If he came to set up the array himself, Shadow Killer Qingming would definitely know and wouldn't walk into the trap so easily, so he could only rely on Master Lu. Shadow Killer Qingming had already turned into an afterimage and pounced. His speed had decreased a lot with the help of the shadow, but it was still too fast for Mu Yu, who was in the out-of-body stage. The shadow blade mixed with a sharp black light slashed over. The formation runes under Mu Yu's feet swayed, and he appeared behind Qingming and waved his hand at Qingming. Halfway through the swing, the shadow sword had already appeared in his hand from the void. A green light flashed on the shadow sword and slashed at Qingming. However, Qingming had already turned around. The shadow blade and the shadow sword collided, creating sparks, and violent spiritual power swept out again. Mu Yu's shadow sword slashed at Qingming from different angles. Each sword move was extremely domineering. At this moment, he was already evenly matched with Qingming's shadow blade. After Shadow Killer lost his shadow, his strength decreased a lot, and even his strength was not as strong as before. However, Shadow Killer Qingming was not an ordinary person. His reaction was quite fast, and he didn't give Mu Yu any chance to take advantage of any loopholes. The shadow blade around him was impenetrable. "Is that all you've got?" Shadow Killer Qingming sneered. The two of them had collided more than 100 times in a short period of time, and neither of them could do anything to the other. There seemed to be more than a dozen Mu Yu around them. Always before the afterimage dissipated, Mu Yu had already appeared in another direction. He had already used his speed to the extreme, but he still couldn't hurt Qingming at all. Mu Yu tiptoed and pulled away from Qingming. At the same time, 5 black and white formation runes appeared in his hand. Then, the black and white formation runes instantly turned into thousands of vigorous swallows. Countless swallows swept at Qingming from different directions in a regular pattern. The shadow blade turned into a black light that filled the sky, scattering the black and white swallows coming at him. Every swallow that was hit by the shadow blade would shatter into countless black and white formation runes that floated in the air. In the blink of an eye, all the swallows had been shredded by Qingming's shadow blade. Although an array master's burst of power is high, I want to know how many times you can use array techniques after using so many array techniques. Just like everyone in the cultivation world, Shadow Killer Qingming also knew the array master's weakness. Although array techniques were powerful array techniques required an array foundation with abundant spirit chi as the foundation. Many innate array foundations had boundless spirit chi, but no matter how boundless the spirit chi was, there would be a time when it was exhausted. Ordinary array masters couldn't continue fighting. But how could Mu Yu be an ordinary array master? It should be enough to kill you. Mu Yu's hands moved the formation runes around him, and his spirit chi spread out at an indiscernible speed. The formation runes that were scattered by Qingming's shadow blade suddenly all seemed to move, and they all covered Qingming's body. Qingming's spirit chi vibrated, wanting to disperse all the formation rune fragments in front of him. But his expression suddenly changed, because those formation rune fragments weren't affected by his spirit chi. They directly passed through the spirit chi barrier he created and merged into his body. Shadow Killer Qingming frowned. No matter who it was, having something unknown enter their body wouldn't be fun. He mobilized all the spirit chi in his body, wanting to get rid of those formation rune fragments. But after the formation rune fragments entered his body, they disappeared without a trace. Is your array technique just a bluff? Shadow Killer Qingming didn't feel anything strange at all. Those formation rune fragments didn't affect him at all. Formation runes surged in Mu Yu's eyes, but Shadow Killer Qingming had already changed in his eyes. Those swallows of his were called nimble swallows returned to nest. They were the same as the Qingyang swallows sound-stealing formation. They didn't have any killing power and wouldn't cause any harm. After they were shattered by the enemy, they would be immune to any spirit chi. As long as they successfully merged into the enemy's body, then they would begin to detect the flaws and weak points of each person's body. Every time the opponent attacked, those formation runes would gather at the flaws of the move. As the caster, Mu Yu could clearly see those formation runes. As long as Mu Yu could successfully hit the opponent's weak point, he would definitely be able to defeat the opponent. However, because everyone knew where their weaknesses were when they attacked, they would deliberately protect their weak point from being broken. If Mu Yu wanted to kill Qingming, he had to attack in a way that Qingming couldn't react in time. Mu Yu once again intertwined with Qingming. The shadow swords and shadow blades collided in the air, creating a huge wave of spirit chi. It instantly exploded in the desert, turning the surrounding yellow sand into fine powder. His figure appeared on the upper left of Qingming. The moment the shadow swords slashed down, Qingming had already made a counterattack. However, Mu Yu's eyes had already seen the weak point on Qingming's left ribs. He kicked out with the tip of his foot, and another shadow sword was kicked out from the void, stabbing towards Qingming's weak point on his left ribs. Qingming was slightly shocked. Mu Yu's way of attacking was too strange. The shadow swords seemed to be everywhere. To Mu Yu, the sword wasn't just controlled by the hand. Qingming forcefully twisted his body away, and at the same time, used the other shadow blade to protect his weak point. With a ding sound, Qing Ming had already jumped out and dodged Mu Yu's attack. However, at this moment, Qing Ming's other weak point appeared on his shoulder. Mu Yu followed like a shadow. Without waiting for Qing Ming to stabilize his body, Mu Yu's sword once again stabbed towards Qing Ming's shoulder. Qing Ming's shoulder was instantly stabbed by Mu Yu. He had originally gathered all the spirit qi in his body, but with Mu Yu attacking his weak point, the spirit qi that he had gathered instantly dissipated. He couldn't gather any strength, and in an instant, he was kicked in the chest by Mu Yu, flying out heavily. Qing Ming looked at Mu Yu in shock and anger. He, a dignified spirit-severing stage cultivator, was actually sent flying by a ninth heaven of out-of-body stage? This was simply a great humiliation. How could you possibly know my weak point? Qing Ming's voice was a little cold. When everyone used a move, they would gather their spirit qi in different places to release the strongest force. However, every time they gathered spirit qi in their body, there would definitely be a gathering point. Once this gathering point was broken, then the move would be powerless and unable to release its true power. Very few people could accurately know where the opponent was gathering spirit qi, because different moves would gather spirit qi in different places. Cultivators could use many moves in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. It was almost impossible to find the weak points of these moves in an instant unless one's strength was much stronger than the opponent's. Only then could one defeat the opponent in an instant. Shadow Killer Qing Ming's cultivation was much higher than Mu Yu's. He really couldn't understand what was going on. I don't want to tell you. Mu Yu was too lazy to explain anything. The strong swallow returns to nest he used was an innate formation technique that Master Lu had taught him. For Mu Yu, this formation technique didn't need to consider the problem of the formation base. However, because it was used on Shadow Killer Qing Ming, who was in the spirit severing stage, it still consumed a lot of spirit qi. After the formation technique showed Qing Ming's weak point 10 times, this formation technique could no longer be maintained. At that time, it would be more difficult for him to kill Qing Ming. In the fight between Mu Yu and Qing Ming just now, Qing Ming's weak point had already appeared twice. Do you really think I only have the shadow hiding technique? Qing Ming glanced at the wound on his shoulder. The spirit qi in his body moved slightly to stop the bleeding. This wound only caused him to be unable to breathe. Mu Yu had taken the initiative to create this wound. It wasn't enough to cause him to be seriously injured. Mu Yu didn't say anything. His figure had already disappeared from the spot. In the blink of an eye, he appeared behind Qing Ming. The shadow sword in his hand stabbed towards Qing Ming's back again. His eyes had been watching the changes in Qing Ming's body. When Qing Ming swung his shadow blade to block Mu Yu again, his weak point appeared on his right elbow again. The shadow sword jumped out of the void and chopped towards Qing Ming's right elbow. However, he suddenly realized that Qing Ming was still blocking in the same spot, but the weak point on his right elbow had already disappeared. Mu Yu frowned slightly. A strong sense of danger invaded his entire body. He pointed back with his left hand. The shadow sword appeared from the void. At the same time, the shadow blade collided with the shadow sword. He didn't know when Qing Ming had appeared behind him. If he was a second late, Mu Yu would have been seriously injured by his shadow blade. The two of them pulled apart the distance again and looked at each other from afar. Although I don't know how you can always see through my weak points, you will definitely die. Qing Ming smiled coldly. His figure suddenly appeared behind Mu Yu. Then, Mu Yu was shocked. His shoulder had been firmly clamped by Qing Ming. He couldn't even activate the Big Dipper constellation formation. The speed of the Clear Sight spell suddenly doubled, and it was even faster than the Shadow Concealment spell just now. Chapter 536. Catcher. A huge force came from Mu Yu's shoulder. Intense pain instantly spread to the right side of his body. He could only pull out the shadow swords from the air to block in front of his chest. His entire body was swept away by Qing Ming. He once again saw the weak spot on Qing Ming's knee. However, his speed did not allow him to make any counterattacks. He could only watch this fleeting opportunity. However, Qing Ming had already appeared in front of his chest in midair. He stepped on his chest and fiercely slammed him into the sand dune. The weak spot on Qingming's calf disappeared again. So fast. Mu Yu's body touched the formation patterns on the ground. A gentle aura came from the 8 trigrams formation and dissipated the impact on his body. He flipped back and steadied himself at the edge of the 8 trigrams formation. Shadow Wolf Kill. Qingming threw the 2 shadow blades high up. The shadow blades turned into 2 black lights in the air. Then the black lights gradually grew bigger and merged together. Immediately after, they formed a huge black wolf. It roared in the air. The violent aura shook the 8 trigrams formation until it was on the verge of collapse. The black wolf flickered with a dark light. Its hollow eyes had already firmly locked onto Mu Yu's aura. Then the black wolf drew an afterimage in the air and pounced toward Mu Yu. The wolf's claws stirred up wind. With a blow that could destroy heaven and earth, the air around the claws seemed to become somewhat distorted. If he was hit by this claw, Mu Yu did not believe that he would survive. Wind fall, dragon howls to the sky. The most powerful part of Mu Yu's 9 heavenly sword guides was that it could use the formation to increase the power of the sword technique. However, all formations were based on the 8 trigrams. Therefore, the 9 heavenly sword guides combined with the 8 trigrams formation raised the sword technique to a new level. Mu Yu's spiritual power was of the wood attribute. When he used the 5th move of the 9 heavenly sword guides, he used the 8 trigrams formation's wind position. At this moment, Mu Yu had already flashed to the southwest of the 8 trigrams formation. He used the wind as the source to activate the entire 8 trigrams formation. The wind pattern of the 8 trigrams formation lit up with alternating black and white patterns. At the same time, the 8 shadow swords suddenly rose from the ground from the 8 directions of the 8 trigrams formation. The 8 shadow swords kept humming, and then each sword soared into the sky one after another. The tip of the sword pressed against the tail of the sword, twisting and rotating. A dragon's roar reverberated through the sky as the green dragon vine rushed out from Mu Yu's hand. It transformed into a huge body and opened its mouth to devour the 8 shadow swords. At the same time, its dragon body seemed to have transformed into an insufferably brilliant dragon sword. With a whistling sound, it brought along a sharp sword chi as it met the terrifying wolf shadow head-on. Boom! With a deafening sound, the formation patterns surged and the yellow sand swirled. The huge impact of the spiritual energy caused the 8 trigrams formation to tremble violently. The black and white formation patterns under Mu Yu's feet transformed into spirit patterns that firmly locked his feet so that he would not be blown away by the impact. When the dust settled, Qingming was still standing in the same place. The shadow wolf in the air landed beside him. The dragon vine also stared fiercely at the opposite side with its bell-sized eyes. In the collision just now, the dragon vine and the shadow wolf were evenly matched. No one could do anything to the other. However, Qingming's heart was in turmoil. His shadow wolf kill was a very fierce move. Even a spirit-severing stage self-cultivator might not be able to block it. However, when he used this move today, he was only able to fight to a draw with Mu Yu, who was in the out-of-body stage. This was really hard for him to accept. How can you still use such a powerful formation? Shadow killer Qingming suppressed the throbbing in his heart and asked. He, a spirit-severing stage shadow killer, was actually unable to kill an out-of-body stage target. If this spread out, he would be a huge joke. He could not accept this result. As a shadow killer, his pride was seriously challenged. Chatterbox. Mu Yu still didn't want to talk nonsense with Qingming. What he cared about was that Qingming's weak points had already appeared 5 times, and he didn't have a chance to break through them. If this continued, the situation would be very bad for him. Although he relied on the dragon vine's help to display the 5th move of the 9-guide heavenly sword, falling dragon roaring to the sky, this move also consumed a lot of his spiritual energy. At this moment, he didn't have much spiritual energy left in his body. He took out a spirit returning pill and ate it. However, the spirit returning pill that could normally instantly recover all the spiritual energy consumed by an out-of-body stage cultivator didn't have any significant effect on him at this moment. He had already used a lot of formation skills. He didn't need to worry about the spiritual energy needed by the formation skills, but using the formation skills consumed his own spiritual energy. This was a huge problem. Ever since Mu Yu's body was transformed by the black and white spiritual energy, a very strange phenomenon occurred. Although he had more spiritual energy than before, this also caused him to need a long time to recover after consuming too much spiritual energy. One spirit returning pill couldn't completely replenish the spiritual energy in his body at this moment. The amount of spiritual energy in his body was far beyond what the spirit returning pill could replenish. One spirit returning pill could only be taken once in 2 days. Taking the second one would have no effect at all. Therefore, even if Mu Yu had a lot of spirit returning pills on him, it was useless. I don't believe that you can hold on any longer. Go. Qing Ming patted the shadow wolf beside him. The shadow wolf immediately roared and rushed towards Mu Yu. Mu Yu, that dog's strength is far beyond mine. I can delay it for a while with the help of the formation. You have to hurry. The dragon vine's body flashed with sword chi. Once again, it faced the shadow wolf. The wolf's howl and the dragon's roar intertwined. The sword chi was everywhere, reverberating in the huge 8 trigrams formation. I got it. Mu Yu panted slightly. His eyes were fixed on the shadow-killing Qing Ming opposite him. Even if it was any other formation master in the out-of-body stage who used formation techniques like Mu Yu, they might only be able to use the Big Dipper constellation formation 2 or 3 times before they couldn't continue. Even if they knew Mu Yu's Feng Zun Luo, Long Xiaotian, they definitely couldn't use it. This was because the Big Dipper constellation formation consumed a lot of spiritual energy and spiritual energy. Mu Yu had endless spiritual energy. He also had more spiritual energy than ordinary people. However, at this point, he was already a spent arrow. When Qing Ming used the Shadow Wolf slash, he had to personally control the Shadow Wolf. However, Mu Yu's Feng Zun Luo and Long Xiaotian didn't need to because the Dragon Vine had its own consciousness. Mu Yu estimated that the spiritual energy in his body could support him to use the Big Dipper constellation formation 3 more times. If he couldn't kill Qing Ming after using the Big Dipper constellation formation 3 times, then he would be in danger. Another weak spot appeared on Qing Ming's body. This weak spot was on his right wrist. At this moment, Mu Yu's 8 shadow swords were combined with the Dragon Vine. Only Mu Ling's sword was left in his hand. Mu Ling's sword's body was intertwined with black and white. Life and death eroded each other. It was still in that tattered appearance. He seized the opportunity. His figure disappeared on the spot. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Qing Ming. Mu Ling's sword slashed towards Qing Ming's right wrist. How did you? Qing Ming's face was extremely shocked. He needed to guide the Shadow Wolf to deal with the Dragon Vine. He originally thought that Mu Yu also needed to control the Dragon Vine. Who would have thought that Mu Yu actually completely broke away from the Dragon Vine and came to kill him alone? In a hurry, Qing Ming's left hand immediately covered his right wrist, covering the weak spot. Mu Ling's sword seemed to be rather slow, but it directly left a deep wound on Qing Ming's arm. Qing Ming kicked out with spiritual power. Mu Yu could only temporarily retreat. Qing Ming's nimble swallow returns to nest could still show the weak spot twice. Mu Yu could only teleport twice. The situation was getting worse. Mu Yu no longer hesitated. Mu Ling's sword suddenly turned into a towering tree. This tree had the appearance of a body tree. However, at this moment, the body tree's branches were all black. Only the leaves were verdant and glistening. However, the veins in the center of each leaf were white. It was very strange. Countless leaves floated down. They seemed to be disorderly, but each leaf carried a sharp killing intent as it surged towards Qing Ming. Mu Yu quickly landed on Qing Ming's left side under the cover of countless leaves. He needed to force Qing Ming to attack. Only when Qing Ming counterattacked would his weak spot appear. You're courting death. Qing Ming snorted coldly. The 16 pulsatilla suddenly broke free from Mu Yu's formation. The sky full of flying feathers welcomed the leaves. After the pulsatilla stopped glowing, shadows appeared on their bodies again. Qing Ming's mouth revealed a trace of a strange smile. His figure had already disappeared into the pulsatilla's shadows. Dark sky murder shadow. Qing Ming made a very strange sound. It was low and obscure. It was unbearable to look at. As if shrouded in the dark night, a cloud of black aura suddenly appeared in the 8 trigrams formation. This cloud of black aura was like a black hole. It tore all the light from Mu Yu's body out and swallowed it. For a moment, the surroundings became dark again. Only the light from the 8 trigrams formation shone on the two people. Mu Yu's shadow also appeared in the 8 trigrams formation. Dark Sky Murder Shadow was the strongest move of the Shadow Assassins. When the light restricted the shadow concealment technique, they could rely on the Dark Sky Murder Shadow to absorb the target's light and reactivate the shadow concealment technique. However, this move was very taxing on the body. Even if Qing Ming used Dark Sky Murder Shadow, he would be trapped in the shadow on the spot and unable to move for 2 hours. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, he would not use this move. However, Mu Yu had already forced him into a desperate situation. He knew that if he did not use Dark Sky Murder Shadow now, he would most likely die in Mu Yu's hands. Qing Ming could see that Mu Yu's spiritual power was also at the point of being a lamp without oil. After using Dark Sky Murder Shadow, as long as he could kill Mu Yu, even if he was trapped in the shadow on the spot and unable to move for 15 minutes, it would not matter. Let's see how you dodge this time. Qing Ming appeared in Mu Yu's shadow. The shadow wolf in the air had also disappeared. It turned back into 2 shadow blades and returned to Qing Ming's hands. Qing Ming's mouth revealed a vicious smile. He stabbed towards Mu Yu's heart from the back. Mu Yu, be careful. Long Ting roared and rushed towards Mu Yu. He wanted to help Mu Yu dodge this sure-kill attack. However, everything was too late. Mu Yu's spiritual power was completely exhausted at this moment. There was no time for him to dodge. Before he could even turn his head, a black blade had already appeared in front of his chest and pierced through his heart. Qing Ming reached out and grabbed Mu Yu's neck. The disciple of a true god. To be able to force me to this point, you're really amazing. However, this is as far as you go. A huge force suddenly erupted from his hand and acted on Mu Yu's neck. Catcher. Qing Ming's face suddenly changed. The sound he heard was actually the sound of trees breaking. Chapter 537. Qing Ming lowered his head in disbelief and saw that his chest had caved in. 2 thick branches extended from Mu Yu's body and instantly crushed Qing Ming's ribs and destroyed his heart. You, how is this possible? Qing Ming looked at Mu Yu, whose neck he was holding, and asked with difficulty. How is this possible? Do you really think you can catch me? Mu Yu's tired voice came from behind Qing Ming. Meanwhile, Mu Yu, who was being held by Qing Ming, slowly turned into a branch. The hand that crushed Qing Ming's ribs was formed from a branch controlling wood. Isn't this the ability of the Mu Yuman? Qing Ming wanted to turn his head and look at Mu Yu, but the side effect of Shadow Sky Murder had already bound him tightly in the shadow, making him unable to move. In fact, even if he could move, he would be powerless because his heart was using a terrifying suction force. The life force in Qing Ming's body poured into the branch like a river that broke through a dam. You don't need to know. Mu Yu panted heavily and said slowly behind Qing Ming. Mu Yu, who was caught by Qing Ming, was a wooden puppet formed by Mu Ling. Mu Yu cast an illusion array on Mu Ling, making it look no different from himself. Even Qing Ming didn't notice anything strange. When Qing Ming caught Mu Ling, his weak point was exposed. Mu Ling's sword instantly turned into 2 branches and broke Qing Ming's weak point, destroying Qing Ming's weak point and destroying Qing Ming's heart. The whole process happened in the blink of an eye. Mu Yu activated the Big Dipper constellation formation to escape from Qing Ming's pursuit. At this moment, the wooden puppet had turned back into Mu Ling's sword. Mu Ling's sword crazily devoured Qing Ming's life force, converting all of his life force into its own power. A faint white light drilled out of Qing Ming's body, trying to escape. However, this strange white light couldn't escape Mu Ling's suction force and was pulled into the sword by Mu Ling. With the life force of a severed soul stage cultivator entering the body, the 3 holes on Mu Ling's sword actually healed. Shadowslay's extreme immortal mark had already left his hand and was flying toward Mu Yu's wrist, covering the extreme immortal mark he had obtained from Tian Kai Yu. Mu Yu was already exhausted. He did not have any ability to stop the extreme immortal's mark from attaching to his body. The 43-foot extreme immortal mark appeared on his wrist, but he did not have the energy to deal with it. You scared me to death. I thought you were killed by Qing Ming. Dragon Vine had also rushed to Mu Yu's side. Seeing that Mu Yu was fine, it let out a sigh of relief. Big Earthworm, why are you so surprised? Why can't you say anything nice? With me around, how could Mu Yu die? Xiao Shuai crawled out from Mu Yu's clothes and took out an apple from somewhere. Little mouse, you didn't do anything the whole time, and you still have the nerve to say that. Dragon Vine was furious. What do you know? Didn't I show my prowess just now? Were you scared silly by my prowess? You didn't even see Xiao Shuai's dark sky thunder fall? Moreover, I'm in charge of logistics. If anything happens to you, I'll take responsibility. If nothing happens, I'll cheer for you. It's also indispensable, Xiao Shuai said proudly. Mu Yu lay on the ground. The 8 trigrams formation around him began to weaken. Tonight's battle with Shadowslay, who was in the spirit severing stage, had almost hollowed out his body. However, it also made him realize something. He struggled to get up, then sat cross-legged and entered into a meditative state. Aya! Mu Yu seems to be about to break through. Big Earthworm, hurry up and stand guard. Don't let anyone come near here, Xiao Shuai said as he wagged his tail. What about you? Dragon Vine asked. Of course I'm in charge of logistics. Are you stupid? Xiao Shuai finished the apple in 2 to 3 bites. Then, he wagged his tail and all the spiritual energy in the desert surged toward Mu Yu. Clearwater City, Mu Residence's main hall. These few days, the Mu family followed Mu Yu's instructions and didn't leave the Mu residence. At this moment, everyone was gathered in the Mu Residence's main hall. Everyone's faces were filled with anxiety. This was because ever since Mu Yu left the Mu residence, it had already been 5 days. However, there was no news from him. Everyone in Clearwater City was spreading the news that Mu Yu was afraid of Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bu Wait. However, only the Mu family knew that Mu Yu went to deal with Shadowslay Qingming alone. Tomorrow was the day that Sikong Chiwen challenged Tian Bu Wait and Mu Yu. However, Mu Yu still hadn't returned. Father, will something happen to Mu Yu Gij? Mu Xin asked anxiously as she tugged on Mu Rongshuan's sleeve. Mu Rongshuan was also worried. However, he still said calmly, Little Xin, be good. Mu Yu will be fine. Don't forget that he's a true God's disciple. Then why isn't Mu Yu Gij back yet? Mu Xin asked. Mu Hao walked to his sister and held her hand. Little Xin, don't worry. Mu Yu Gij needs to deal with the bad guy. After that, he'll naturally come back. Well, Big Brother Mu Yu will definitely beat the bad guy to a pulp, won't he? Mu Xin showed a firm smile. Mu Hao pursed his lips. Not only him, but everyone in the Mu family also felt an inexplicable sense of panic. Everyone knew what the bad guy meant. It was Shadowslay Qingming, the 43rd extreme immortal. His cultivation level was in the severed soul stage. He was 1 stage higher than Mu Yu, who was in the out-of-body stage. The difference in power was like heaven and earth. Mu Zixing suddenly stood up and walked outside. Zixing, stop. Where are you going? Mu Tianhe yelled. I'm going to find my son. Mu Zixing said stiffly. That's Shadowslay Qingming. What can you do? Do you know how many people outside are watching our wood clan's every move? Once you go out, how many people will be watching you? What if there are people with bad intentions? Mu Tianhe scolded. Mu Zixing clenched his fist. 20 years ago, I couldn't protect him. 20 years later, I still have to watch him take risks alone. What kind of father am I? Even if I have to die, I will protect him. Mu Tianhe sighed. At this moment, he also regretted letting Mu Yu leave the Mu mansion alone. But the threat of Shadowslay Qingming was not a joke. If this hidden danger was not eliminated, Mu Yu would always be in danger. No one in the Mu family could help him. The only person who could resolve this crisis was Mu Yu himself. You are not the only one here who is worried about him. Mu Tianhe sighed. I am his father. Mu Zixing emphasized. Mu Yu is the hope of all of us. His matter is not something that can be solved just because you call him father. Mu Tianhe raised his voice. Mu Zixing's entire body trembled. His heart was greatly tormented. After struggling for a moment, he finally sat down again. Mu Tianhe looked at Master Lu and said respectfully, Master Lu, what do you think we should do now? Master Lu said in a low voice, we can only wait. Mu Yu is still alive. I am sure of that. The Chaos Yin-Yang was originally divided into two supreme treasures, the Formation Glyphstone and the Formation Hall. These two treasures had always been guarding the Formation faction and the Glyph faction. Their auras would imperceptibly transfer to every Formation Master and Glyph Master. Therefore, when the Chaos Yin-Yang recognized a Master, as long as any Formation Master or Glyph Master thought of the words Chaos Yin-Yang, the supreme aura of the Formation Glyph Tao would immediately affect them. That Formation Master or Glyph Master would be involuntarily affected by this aura and unable to resist. The aura of the Chaos Yin-Yang was extremely powerful. This aura seemed to be directly branded into the souls of every Formation Master and Glyph Master. Once something happened to the Master of the Chaos Yin-Yang, the pressure on their hearts would dissipate and the people of the Formation faction and Glyph faction would sense it. Master Lu had been thinking about the Chaos Yin-Yang for the past few days. The aura of the Chaos Yin-Yang had shrouded his heart and could not dissipate. Therefore, he was certain that nothing had happened to Mu Yu. However, while he was certain of this, the Mu clan was not. That was why they were so anxious. Tomorrow is the day Sikong Chiwen challenges Tian Bulai and Mu Yu. I wonder if Mu Yu will be able to make it back in time? Cai Lai was not worried because he was the one who understood Mu Yu the most among these people. Mu Yu would often turn misfortunes into blessings and do unexpected things. He was already used to it. As long as Mu Yu can make it back, then we don't have to care about the two of them. Mu Tianhe shook his head slightly. Everyone was silent. Shadow Killer Qing Ming's ranking was even higher than Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bulai. If Mu Yu could escape from Shadow Killer Qing Ming's hands safely, then Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bulai would not be able to do anything to Mu Yu. However, now that there was no news of Mu Yu, their worries were not unfounded. In Clearwater City's Bet Must Win casino, the bets on the three of them would end at midnight. Because Mu Yu had left Clearwater City for no reason, no one dared to bet on Mu Yu these few days. In order to encourage everyone to bet on Mu Yu, the casino even set the odds to 50. This meant that if Mu Yu was the final winner, then anyone who bet on Mu Yu would get 50 times the return. Even so, there were only a few people who bet on Mu Yu winning. Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bulai's bets were completely tied. Countless dots of light had accumulated. Some nosy people counted carefully and realized that at least 200 million spirit stones had been placed in this casino over the past few days. This was a rather frightening number because there were more than 100 strange bets. These bets were all meticulously calculated by Du Baiying to minimize the losses. Therefore, no matter who won in the end, the gambling house would not suffer a loss. Instead, they would make a huge profit. There was basically no one in the casino at night, but at this time, 3 people walked in. None of the 3 were ordinary people. Their auras were steady and restrained, and it seemed to make the empty casino somewhat oppressive. If I bet on Sikong Chiwen winning, will the 2 of you beat me up? Shimon Wuji opened his fan with a huala sound, and leisurely looked at the 3 big light beams before his eyes. Among them, 2 of the big light beams were very conspicuous. Only Mu Yu's light beam had pitifully few people betting. Cheng Yang walked silently to Mu Yu's pillar of light and threw in 1,000,000 spirit stones. Are you so sure that little brother Mu Yu will win? Shimon Wuji laughed. Cheng Yang looked at Shimon Wuji and said calmly, I'm his senior brother. If he loses, I'll bet on him too. Also, I've been a little tight on money recently. I think Mu Yu will earn some money for me. Cheng Yang was the only one who could do something like this when someone who was short on cash was willing to pay 1,000,000 at once. Without another word, Luo Shong also invested 1,000,000 spirit stones in Mu Yu. I thought you didn't like your little junior brother. Shimon Wuji looked at Luo Shong in surprise. He had already been dragged by Luo Shong to save Mu Yu twice. Of course I don't like him. If he loses, then this 1,000,000 spirit stones will be his hush money. He can forget about calling me senior brother in the future. I find it embarrassing. Luo Shong said calmly. To be honest, I also don't like Sikong Chiwen and Heaven Doesn't Wait. Especially Heaven Doesn't Wait. He always has a fake smile on his face. I hate him. Shimon Wuji also bet 1,000,000 spirit stones on Mu Yu. Can your own people bet in your casino? Cheng Yang asked. This casino is not mine, but Du Being's. I remember that he still owes me 253,838 spirit stones. Shimon Wuji said leisurely. This number was not bad. We didn't come here just to bet on Mu Yu. Luo Shong said. What's so good about those three people's battle? It attracted so many people. Next time when I challenge Luo Shong, I'll spread the news. There will be a lot of beauties coming to support me. Shimon Wuji shook his head and stretched. Luo Shong coldly glanced at him. Chapter 538. Clearwater City's sky had always been blue. As an oasis in the desert, the inside and outside of the city seemed to be two different worlds. Due to the existence of the Great City Protection Array, Clearwater City kept the heat of the desert outside. The temperature in Clearwater City was very comfortable all year round. Outside the city walls were green poplars that could resist the invasion of the wind and sand. Generally speaking, cultivators didn't like to wander around the desert when they had nothing better to do. The scorching heat was unbearable. However, Clearwater City was very empty today. There were only a few old, weak, women, and children who didn't have any cultivation. The originally bustling streets were empty now. It was a stark contrast to the bustling streets from a while ago. All the cultivators rushed out of Clearwater City. Braving the heat, they excitedly headed to the Desert of Death to watch the battle between the three of them. To be exact, it was two people. Because no one had found any trace of Mu Yu in Clearwater City, they all thought that Mu Yu wouldn't come today. Outside Clearwater City, the Desert of Death. The red Desert of Death stood out in the wind and sand. The rocks were severely weathered and looked like they would shatter at the slightest touch. However, everyone knew how hard the rocks of the Desert of Death were. Even an out-of-body cultivator might not be able to leave a mark on them. Sikong Chiwen and Tian Buwai hadn't arrived yet, but the area within 100 miles was already packed with cultivators. They were all over the desert. There were no less than 200,000 people. These 200,000 people were cultivators from all over the three continents. They wanted to see the demeanor of the Dark Horse, Sikong Chiwen, and the young master of Stargate, Tian Buwai. Because there were too many people, even if the cultivators were in the air, they wouldn't be able to see the entire scene of the battle. Hence, the array masters played a crucial role here. Master Lu and Sichu Yangtian led a few disciples of the array faction to use the Mirage Array to forcibly move the entire scene of the Desert of Death into different areas of the desert. Master Lu and the others created close to 20 Mirage Array formations in the boundless desert. Each formation could be seen by about 10,000 people. Surrounding the formations, they could watch the battle in the Desert of Death in the distance. Because they were all in the desert, even if they weren't in the Desert of Death, they could still know what was happening in the Desert of Death. This formation was extremely profound. By using light rays and formation patterns to project the effects of an area, one could completely pass off the false as the real thing. The Mirage formation was also an illusion formation that every culmination formation master had to learn. If it could be modified reasonably, it could even trap a person who was trapped in the illusion formation forever in the Kuan-Zi formation. The Desert of Death could not accommodate so many people, so the self-cultivators who could watch the competition near the real Desert of Death were at least in the out-of-body stage. There were also many in the Fenshin stage, and there were even a few in the form synthesis stage. This place had become a gathering place for masters. As for those with weaker cultivations, they couldn't squeeze into the area of the Desert of Death, so they could only watch from the mirage formation created by Master Lu. Of course, it wasn't free to watch. If one wanted to see the scene created by the mirage formation, they would need to pay 100 spirit stones. Then, a formation pattern would be injected into the person's eyes, and they would be able to see the scene of the mirage formation. Master Lu didn't come to Clearwater City just to help the evil sect set up the formation. They saw this business opportunity and were willing to pay a reasonable fee. This kind of opportunity was very rare, and the speed of money was much faster than helping others create the formation. 100 spirit stones wasn't expensive, and it was quite worth it to be able to see the battle between two extreme immortals. Other than the 10,000 or so people who were able to watch the competition in the real Desert of Death, there were nearly 180,000 people who chose to buy the Mirage formation from Master Lu to watch the formation pattern. This also meant that Master Lu would earn at least 18 million spirit stones from this business. For the Array faction, this was not a small amount. It was reasonable to say that Master Lu should be very happy, but at this moment, Master Lu appeared to be very unhappy. The jingling sound of spirit stones in his pocket could not arouse his interest, because he had lost the sect master who caused him so much worry. Mu Yu, my little ancestor, where are you? Master Lu looked around anxiously, but unfortunately, he couldn't find any trace of Mu Yu. A few days ago, Mu Yu had asked Master Lu and Sichu Yangtian to set up a few huge fixed formations in the desert, specifically to deal with Shadow Killer Qing Ming. Yesterday, Master Lu went to the place where the fixed formations were set up to check, but the formations in the desert had disappeared. Mu Yu used the chaotic yin and yang to move the entire fixed formations away, leaving no traces. The place where he fought with Shadow Killer Qing Ming was different from the place where Master Lu set up the formations. The desert was so big, and Master Lu didn't know where to look. Is there still no news of Mu Yu? Sichu Yangtian came over and asked. Master Lu shook his head. The only thing the two of them could be sure of was that Mu Yu was still alive, but they didn't know where he was. Their sect master hadn't fully grown yet, and now he was going to fight Shadow Killer Qing Ming, who was ranked 43rd among the extreme immortals. The more Master Lu thought about it, the more regretful he became. Why did he agree to Mu Yu's plan? Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhaxing were next to Master Lu, and they looked very anxious. Mu Yu had been missing for several days. If it weren't for the fact that Master Lu and Sichu Yangtian were sure that Mu Yu was still alive, they wouldn't have been able to hold back. Except for Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhaxing, who had the ability to protect themselves, the rest of the Mu family didn't come to the desert because they were worried about accidents, so they all stayed in the Mu mansion. Sichu Yangtian helped them set up a small mirage formation in the Mu mansion, so that they could see the situation here, but whether it was the scale or the effect, it was obviously not as real as in the desert. Where's young friend Cai Lai? Master Lu asked. He said he went to find his brother Xingao to find out what the 8 gates are going to do, Mu Zhaxing said. Forget it, let's go to the Desert of Death first. Xikong Chiwen and Tian Buwai were about to reach the Death Desert. Don't get lost, just follow us, Master Lu said to Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhaxing. Thank you for your trouble, Master Lu and Master Sichu, Mu Tianhe said. He and Mu Zhaxing had come mainly to wait for Mu Yu, but in order not to attract attention, Master Lu had set up an illusion formation on their faces to hide their true faces. Master Lu and Sichu Yangtian needed to cast a formation near the Desert of Death and transmit the situation of the battle to the Mirage formation in other places. With their strength as severed spirit formation masters, they had more than enough power to occupy a place in the Desert of Death. They quickly led Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhaxing to the Desert of Death. The Desert of Death. The sand around the Desert of Death was still flowing, as if there was an unknown force pulling the sand. It was said that this sand had already swallowed many people, and sometimes one could even see eerie white bones floating in the sand. The self-cultivators who had the strength to watch from the Death Desert were ranked according to their cultivation level. The innermost layer was filled with severed soul stage cultivators. There weren't many severed soul stage cultivators, only about 100 of them. Most of the severed soul stage cultivators were old and had exceeded the age limit of the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. They were only here to broaden their horizons. Everyone was here for Xikong Chiwen, because many people wanted to know how strong the legendary golden phoenix that flew out of the grass nest was. Seekong Chiwen was famous in the self-cultivator world, but very few people had seen him fight, and no one knew how he defeated his opponents. Everyone's knowledge of his achievements came from the information on the Supreme Immortal Tablet. This was the first time he truly fought in front of everyone, so everyone was looking forward to seeing what Seekong Chiwen's moves were. Many people were very interested in how Seekong Chiwen turned from a rookie during the Jindan period into a dark horse in just 1 year. If they could dig out his secrets, it would be very important for themselves and their sect. Everyone was more familiar with Tian Bu Wait. This young master of Stargate, no matter how hard he tried to hide it, there were still people who saw him fight. His supreme immortal information was not hard to buy, and some rich people already knew about Tian Bu Wait. As for Mu Yu, who was once again labeled as someone who lost without a fight, no one had any hope for him. Even if he appeared here today, it would not help because his cultivation was only at the 9th sky of out-of-body realm. In many people's opinion, Mu Yu, who was at the 9th sky of out-of-body realm, was no match for Seekong Chiwen and Tian Bu, who were at the 6th sky of out-of-body realm. Did you know? I heard that the servants of the Mu clan leaked the news that Mu Yu didn't abandon the Mu clan and left Clearwater City. Instead, he went alone to find Shadow Killer Qing Ming. Didn't someone ask Shadow Killer Qing Ming to kill Mu Yu? Then wouldn't he be walking into a tiger's den if he went alone? Who knows? Anyway, the Mu clan is panicking now, and there's still no news of Mu Yu. He probably died in the hands of Shadow Killer Qing Ming. What a pity. Actually, I have high hopes for Mu Yu. In terms of potential, Mu Yu should be higher than Seekong Chiwen. After all, he's the youngest. As long as he's given time, I can guarantee that he'll definitely trample Seekong Chiwen under his feet. What's the use of your guarantee? If he really went to find Shadow Killer Qing Ming, with his current cultivation level, he's just digging his own grave. He's too arrogant. Yeah. Many self-cultivators were discussing Mu Yu. Although the 3 main characters of the Desert of Death hadn't appeared yet, everyone had already eliminated Mu Yu from the competition. Today's competition had completely become Seekong Chiwen and Tian Bui's battlefield. Suddenly, a sharp whistling sound rang out in the scorching hot air. Then, a figure approached from afar, taking a step forward. Seekong Chiwen's figure slowly appeared in front of everyone. His white robes fluttered in the wind, and his aura was extremely ostentatious. He was like a sharp sword, making it hard for anyone to get close to him. Seekong Chiwen stood on the highest peak of the Desert of Death. He didn't make any unnecessary movements, nor did he speak. The countless gazes around him didn't affect him at all. He closed his eyes and rested. After about a quarter of an hour, Tian Bui also landed on the rock opposite Seekong Chiwen with a gentle smile. In contrast to Seekong Chiwen, Tian Bui's aura was restrained and deep. He was like a warm jade that made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. Chapter 539. On the 6th day of the 6th month, there were still 4 hours before noon. The scorching sun shone on the Death Desert, making everyone's heart burn. Because the 2 heavens chosen had arrived, it meant that an unprecedented battle was about to begin. Regardless of who won or lost today, the battle between these 2 people would definitely be praised endlessly by everyone. Seekong Chiwen and Tian Bui looked at each other. Neither of them was in a hurry to make a move, nor did they say anything. The 2 of them stood like this for a long time. The scorching sun had already made the desert steamy. Many people were even getting impatient. Why haven't they started yet? Yeah. It's been almost 2 hours since they arrived. They didn't understand what the 2 were waiting for. The battle should have started 2 hours ago, but no one expected the 2 to show no signs of making a move. Seekong Chiwen opened his eyes and looked at Tian Bui. Are you in a hurry? Tian Bui smiled gently. The person I want to kill hasn't arrived yet. I'm not in a hurry. The true God's disciple will die at my hands, not yours. Seekong Chiwen said slowly. Not necessarily. Tian Bui shook his head. Everyone was in an uproar. The two of them hadn't made a move yet because they were waiting for the true god's disciple, Mu Yu, to appear. Moreover, both of them wanted to kill Mu Yu. Thinking about it, it seemed to make sense. If the true god's disciple died at the hands of either of them, their reputation would be even more prominent. Jian Ying and Chen Feng were true gods of the third layer of the continent. Their achievements and cultivation were second to none. His disciple was also known as the person most capable of creating miracles. If someone could kill the true god's disciple, then that person would naturally step on the corpse of the true god's disciple and become the object of praise in the cultivation world. Bastard! You're asking for a beating. Mu Yu is much stronger than you. Master Lu clenched his fists in anger. Sichu Yangtian also looked at Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bushu angrily. He had never liked Mu Yu, but that was also because he suspected Mu Yu's identity. Now that Mu Yu had become their sect master, he would not allow Mu Yu to be looked down upon like this. The dignified sect leader of the Formation Glyph sect was actually humiliated in such a manner. How infuriating. In everyone's eyes, Mu Yu, who had the lowest cultivation, had become the target that everyone could bully. This was a rather interesting matter. However, none of the self-cultivators present thought that Sikong Chiwen and Tian Buli were bluffing, because Mu Yu's cultivation was indeed inferior to theirs before he grew up. You're going too far. Mu Tianhe forcefully suppressed his anger. His grandson was being used as a stepping stone to become famous, but he couldn't do anything about it. This was a very sullen thing. Mu Yu, where the hell are you? Mu Zixing's face was full of anxiety. At this moment, he was also very conflicted. He didn't want his son to be looked down upon, but he also didn't want his son to appear here, because he knew that his son didn't have the ability to fight against the two people in front of him. Sikong Chiwen and Tian Buli were still looking at each other, and once again fell into silence. In the desert, no matter if they were present or not, they were already impatient. Some people even began to curse. After all, everyone had braved the scorching heat to watch the battle between Sikong Chiwen and Tian Buli, not to accompany the two of them and wait for the arrival of another person. Both of you want to kill the true god's disciple to prove yourselves, so why don't you take the true god's disciple as the trophy of victory? Why don't the two of you fight it out, and the winner can fight with Mu Yu and kill the true god's disciple? Isn't that better? Someone couldn't help but shout loudly. His words were immediately echoed by many onlookers. Many of the onlookers nodded in agreement. Taking the true god's disciple's life as the trophy of this battle was blatantly not putting Mu Yu, Sikong Chiwen, and Tian Buli on the same level. What do you think? Tian Buli asked gently. It couldn't be better, Sikong Chiwen said calmly. The auras of the sixth heavenly layer doppelgangers started to become restless around the desert of death. One of them was the young master of the Heavenly Star sect, and the other was a dark horse on the Supreme Immortal ranking. Both of them were outstanding figures of the younger generation. No matter who won this battle, it would be a feast for the eyes. The true god's disciple's life is mine. Tian Buli's gentle eyes suddenly revealed a trace of ferocious killing intent. A long spear had already appeared in his hand. Under the illumination of the sun, the heavenly astral spear flickered with a clear and cold light. It was known as the world's most indestructible spear, invincible in every battle. Once the spear appeared, all the sharp weapons in the world seemed to be overshadowed in front of it. You're wrong. The true god's disciple's life belongs to me, Sikong Chiwen sneered. A yellow flying sword streaked across his hand. The flying sword didn't shine at all. It was like an ordinary blunt sword. However, it gave people a heavy feeling. It was as if it weighed thousands of pounds. It pressed heavily on everyone's heart. Their auras continued to rise, competing with each other. They soared into the sky like rainbows piercing through the sun. At a certain point in time, their auras suddenly accumulated to the limit. Then, the two figures disappeared from where they were. With a terrifying explosion, they charged towards each other. However, at this moment, a green sword suddenly appeared between the two of them. The green sword was like a clear spring. It shone with a biting cold light. It appeared so suddenly that Sikong Chiwen and Tian Buli were caught off guard. The surging sword aura suddenly swept out like a huge wave. It directly destroyed the entire death desert into rubble and fell down. Sikong Chiwen and Tien Buli's expressions changed. They quickly retreated. After retreating about 30 meters, they slowly stabilized their bodies. They coldly looked at the person wrapped in the biting cold sword aura. You want to take my life so much? Are you too worthy? A figure slowly appeared between the two people. His aura was like the sun in the sky. He was like a god descending to the mortal world. Everyone couldn't help but tremble. The true god's disciple, Mu Yu. How is this possible? The true god's disciple is actually. This aura is not weaker than Sikong Chiwen and Tien Buli's. Isn't Mu Yu only in the out-of-body stage? When did he enter the Fenshin stage? Heavens! Mu Yu actually repelled Sikong Chiwen and Tien Buli at the same time. Isn't this too unbelievable? Mu Yu's appearance set off a huge wave in the eyes of the 200,000 self-cultivators. They all thought that Mu Yu, who had the weakest cultivation, was a coward and didn't dare to show up. Those who knew that Mu Yu went to find Shadow Killer Ming Ming thought that Mu Yu was doomed. However, no one expected that Mu Yu had already stepped into the Fenshin stage. Looking at his terrifying aura, it was not weaker than Sikong Chiwen and Tien Buli's. It was a slap in the face to all those who had mocked and looked down on him. They wanted to take him as the spoils of war for Sikong Chiwen and Tien Buli, but he had already repelled both of them at the same time. Only now did they realize how ridiculous their original idea was. It's Mu Yu. That's great. Lu Xianxia and Sichu Yangtian's nervous hearts immediately relaxed. Mu Yu's appearance at this time undoubtedly allowed them to breathe a sigh of relief. As the leader of the Formation Glyph sect, Mu Yu couldn't have any mishaps. I knew Mu Yu would be fine. Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhexing also looked excitedly at the strange yet familiar figure in the middle of the field. They couldn't help but feel excited. Mu Yu quietly floated in the air and coldly glanced around. Then, his eyes fell on Tien Buli. Anger and resentment flashed through Mu Yu's eyes. The enemy who killed Deadwood Daddy was right in front of him, but Mu Yu didn't have any impulse. He knew that today, the two of them would definitely settle things. You've been hiding from me for half a year. Why don't you continue hiding? Is it because the anniversary of Deadwood Senior's death hasn't arrived yet? Tien Buli looked at Mu Yu gently. Mu Yu stared at Tien Buli and suddenly revealed a mocking smile. Tien Buli, you want to kill me in front of others, but on the other hand, you're secretly plotting against me. Are you so unconfident in yourself that you still need to rely on Shadow Killer Qingming to kill me? Tien Buli stopped smiling and frowned. Shadow Killer Qingming? How come you don't even know about Shadow Killer Qingming? It seems that your bullshit leader of Stargate doesn't even trust your son. He even invited Shadow Killer Qingming, who is ranked 43rd in the Extreme Immortal ranking, to kill me. How laughable. I thought that your pathetic leader of Stargate would have a little more confidence in you. Mu Yu mocked. He had always regarded Tien Buli as a real opponent, but ever since he found out that Tien Buli's achievements today were all because Tien Yuhen asked Shadow Killer Qingming to secretly help him, he suddenly looked down on Tien Buli. What? Shadow Killer Qingming was actually invited by Stargate's leader, Tien Yuhen, to assassinate Mu Yu? Stargate would actually do such a thing? This news instantly exploded in everyone's eyes. Everyone looked at each other, half believing and half doubting this news. If this was true, then Tien Buli was really shameless to the extreme. On one hand, he claimed that he wanted to kill Mu Yu with his own hands. On the other hand, he actually invited Shadow Killer Qingming, who was ranked 43rd in the Extreme Immortal ranking, to kill Mu Yu. In everyone's eyes, this was a joke. However, another doubt surfaced in everyone's mind. If Shadow Killer Qingming was going to assassinate Mu Yu, then how did Mu Yu appear here safe and sound? I don't like people insulting my father. Tien Buli's eyes flashed with boundless killing intent. So, just stating the truth is insulting your father? You must be very proud of living in your father's lies every day, right? Mu Yu sneered. Insulting my father, you are courting death. Tien Buli no longer had that hypocritical smile on his face. I'm sorry for stepping on your tail. Mu Yu's every word was full of hatred. In the past few months after Deadwood Daddy's death, Mu Yu had been thinking about killing Tian Bewley all the time. However, when Tian Bewley appeared in front of him, he found that he was surprisingly calm. Because he knew that Tian Bewley would definitely die in his hands. Mu Yu stretched out his right hand and looked at his wrist indifferently. The 43 Extreme Immortal mark was clearly displayed in front of everyone's eyes. 43. This Extreme Immortal mark was so dazzling in everyone's eyes. It was like a bolt of lightning striking everyone's eyes, causing everyone to be stunned for a moment. Unfortunately, Tian Bewley, if you want to kill me, Shadow Killer Qing Ming alone is far from enough. Mu Yu said slowly. Shadow Killer Qing Ming, the 43rd Extreme Immortal, was one of the most terrifying assassins in the Silhouette being. He had never failed any of the missions he took on, and so far, no one who had been targeted by him had survived. However, Mu Yu had snatched Shadow Killer Qing Ming's Extreme Immortal mark, which meant that Shadow Killer Qing Ming had already been defeated by Mu Yu, and he had even been killed by Mu Yu. Silence. Everyone was silent. Many people couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Mu Yu was only at the 9th celestial layer of out-of-body realm at the beginning. How could he kill Shadow Killer Qing Ming? Shadow Killer Qing Ming was an extreme immortal who ranked higher than Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bewley, but he was still defeated by Mu Yu. Didn't that mean that Mu Yu could easily deal with either Sikong Chiwen or Tian Bewley? Chapter 540. Mu Yu's Extreme Immortal ranking had risen to 43. That was Shadow Killer Qing Ming's ranking. Everyone knew what the Shadow Killer of the Silhouette being meant. They came and went like ghosts, and their methods of killing were clean and efficient. Their missions were almost guaranteed to succeed, and it was rare to hear of them failing. However, no one expected that Mu Yu, who was looked down upon the most at the beginning, would directly kill Shadow Killer Qing Ming. He even took over their ranking, and according to Mu Yu, Shadow Killer Qing Ming seemed to be sent by Tian Bushi's father, Tian Yuhen. This was very ironic. Tian Bushi came to Clearwater City to fight with Sikong Chiwen. Later, Mu Yu also appeared in Clearwater City and threatened to kill Tian Bushi. Tian Bushi had always wanted to kill Mu Yu. Whether it was Tian Bu Waiting's cultivation or extreme immortal ranking, he was far superior to Mu Yu. Everyone was optimistic about Tian Bu Waiting. They thought that this battle would be a fair contest, but who would have thought that the sect leader of the Skystar sect would send Qing Ming to assassinate Mu Yu? This was clearly Stargate's leader's distrust of his son. I don't need the help of outsiders to kill you. Tian Bushi's gentle expression had long disappeared and was replaced by a cold murderous intent. Mu Yu's words made him feel an unspeakable shame. Tian Bushi knew that Shadow Killer Qing Ming wanted to assassinate Mu Yu. When his father, Tian Yuhen, sent Shadow Killer Qing Ming, he was extremely opposed because he knew that Mu Yu would definitely come to him for revenge. And what he wanted to do was to kill the true God's disciple in front of everyone in the cultivation world. Only in this way would his reputation of not waiting for the heavens be even more feared. At that time, Tian Yuhen had already promised Tian Bushi that he would kill the true God's disciple. However, in secret, Tian Yuhen did not want to take this risk. The true God's disciple was known to be the person who could create miracles the most. He was worried that his son would fail, so he asked Shadow Killer Qing Ming to come and kill Mu Yu. It was supposed to be a foolproof plan, but who would have thought that the person who created the most miracles lived up to his reputation? Mu Yu killed the Shadow Killer, Qing Ming, who was feared by everyone. Everyone understood once again that there was a price to pay for underestimating a true God's disciple. Mu Yu's ranking on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard was higher than Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bushi. This battle was no longer just between the two of them. Don't ask for help from outsiders. That was even better than singing. Then, in order to deal with Sikong Chiwen, didn't the people of the Eight Gates help you? Don't you feel disgusted saying that? Mu Yu said coldly. The veins on Tian Bushi's forehead bulged. Mu Yu looked at Tian Bushi, who no longer had his usual calm expression. He knew that his killing of Shadow Killer Qingming had affected Tian Bushi's state of mind. He smiled and said, "What's wrong? Shadow Killer Qingming was defeated by me. Did that fake smile of yours disappear?" Tian Bushi usually gave people the impression that he was a gentle and refined young man. However, at this moment, his face no longer had that fake expression of the past. Instead, it became somewhat ferocious. Tian Bushi narrowed his eyes and looked at Mu Yu. "Do you think you can defeat me just because you defeated Shadow Killer Qingming? Let me tell you, you will die by my hands today. I will step on your corpse and let the cultivation world know who the true genius is." Sikong Chiwen also looked at Mu Yu. From Mu Yu's aura, it was clear that he had just stepped into the spirit severing stage. However, Mu Yu was like a volcano waiting to erupt. It was as if there was a lion sleeping in his heart. This instead stimulated his competitive spirit. "Tian Bushi, I think you should just wait on the side. If a true god's disciple dies, it will be by my hands. I will step on him to rise," Sikong Chiwen said without hesitation. Mu Yu now had the strength of the spirit-severing stage. He was not on the same level as Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bushi. No matter who killed a true god's disciple, they would be talked about enthusiastically in the cultivation world. Jian Ying and Chen Feng represented the true gods of the 3 continents. If they could kill a true god's disciple, it would definitely be a praiseworthy thing. Everyone wanted to have this honor. This was also the reason why Sikong Chiwen specially challenged Mu Yu and Tian Bushi in front of so many people today. No matter who won today's battle, the entire cultivation world would remember him. "Looks like we have a problem. That is, who should kill a true god's disciple? I can't let you kill him first, can I?" Tian Bushi sneered. He still did not put Mu Yu in his eyes. Just like what Shadow Kill Qingming said, Tian Bushi was not as simple as being ranked 50th. He was much stronger than Shadow Kill Qingming. Even if Mu Yu killed Shadow Kill Qingming, Tian Bushi was not afraid at all. "Problem? I don't think it's difficult. Both of you want to kill me. Why don't both of you come at me together?" Mu Yu said slowly. His voice wasn't loud, but it stunned everyone. "Both of them together? How dare this Mu Yu say such big words?" Even if he defeated Shadow Kill Qingming, the combined strength of Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bushi is definitely not weaker than Shadow Kill Qingming. How can he be so confident? 1 against 2? Isn't that shameless? Many people were talking about it. Mu Yu breaking through to the spirit-severing stage surprised many people, and killing Shadow Kill Qingming was even more unbelievable. However, everyone present was an expert. They all understood that 2 people at the spirit-severing stage together were not as simple as 1 + 1. Shadow Kill Qingming might be powerful, but he definitely did not dare to say that he could fight against Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bushi at the same time. After all, these 2 people were top geniuses. Was Mu Yu really going to fight against 2 people at the same time? Master Lu and Situ Yangtian looked at each other and saw a trace of worry in each other's eyes. Although Mu Yu was the sect master of their formation glyph sect, the current Mu Yu had not really grown up and had just broken through to the spirit-severing stage. They were not worried about 1-on-1, but 1 against 2 was a bit overconfident. Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhaxing were even more nervous. They couldn't wait to stop this competition, but in front of so many people, if they did anything, there would be countless people who would take them down. 1 against 2, are you worthy? Tian Bushi said disdainfully. "I don't know if I'm worthy or not, but I'm sure you'll die." Mu Yu's fighting spirit was soaring. The enemy who killed Deadwood Daddy was right in front of him. How could he let him go? These 2 people wanted to step on his corpse to prove themselves. How could he let these 2 people laugh at him unscrupulously? Arrogant. Tian Bushi snorted coldly. Mu Yu didn't continue to talk nonsense. A green 8 trigrams formation pattern appeared under his feet. His whole body just happened to be in the southwest direction of the 8 trigrams formation. The formation pattern in his hand surged and a majestic spiritual power suddenly hit the 8 trigrams formation. The shadow swords flashed out from different positions of the 8 trigrams formation. Each shadow sword flashed with a cold light. Then, all the shadow swords soared into the sky. The tip of the sword touched the tail of the 8 trigrams formation. A dragon-shaped sword shadow rushed up from the 8 trigrams formation. Wind Zunluo dragon roaring sky. The dragon vine roared and shot out from Mu Yu's hand, instantly swallowing up the violent sword intent. The dragon vine's entire body was like a sharp sword, nimbly circling above Mu Yu's head. Little handsome dragon vine, you guys be careful. Mu Yu's gaze fell on Tian Bushi. Got it. Hurry up and kill Tian Bushi. Sikong Chiwen and I will take care of Big Earthworm. Little Shuai also jumped into the 8 trigrams array. Blue light sputtered from his tiny body. He placed one of his tiny hands on his waist while the other pointed at the sky. All the white fur on his body stood on end. A blue sword with his tiny paw as the hilt soared into the sky. Mu Yu also held a shadow sword in his hand. His sword intent was awe-inspiring. Murderous intent filled the air and pointed to Tian Bushi. Everyone looked at Mu Yu in shock. Whether it was the formation pattern under his feet, the huge dragon vine, or the cute little handsome, they all emitted an aura that shook people's hearts in the rolling heat wave. Everyone couldn't help but take a few steps back. No wonder Mu Yu has the confidence to fight 1 against 2. Array masters really do have this ability. But Sikong Chiwen and Tian Bushi definitely know how to deal with array masters. Everyone knew the strengths and weaknesses of array masters. Their explosive power was just too high. Many people didn't dare to casually fight with array masters. Even if array masters had the weakness of not being able to continue the fight, many people would be defeated before the array master's formation dissipated. But he can command 2 demonic beasts. This is obviously the ability of the earthly imperial sect. Everyone was puzzled. Mu Yu relied on 2 powerful demonic beasts to participate in the battle, but no one said anything. This was because every disciple of the earthly imperial sect would tame powerful demonic beasts for battle. The strength of the earthly imperial sect was linked to the demonic beasts. Not to mention others, Xing Jiao, who was ranked 63rd on the Supreme Immortal ranking, had a godly eagle by his side. Many people were defeated by his godly eagle. This Mu Yu couldn't be related to the earthly imperial sect, right? No wonder Mu Yu dared to fight 2 supreme immortals at the same time. Powerful demonic beasts, array master, and true god's disciple. These 3 identities gave him the confidence to do so. The wind-wind heart-linking formation was guarded by Little Handsome. Mu Yu and Dragon Vine had already charged toward Tian Bushi and Sikong Chiwen respectively. Wind Dragon Vine howling sky. Dragon Vine's sword chi carved a deep hole in the sand dunes along the way. He opened his mouth and spat out a violent dragon breath that turned into terrifying swords that filled the sky and fell toward Sikong Chiwen. Dragon Vine was only in the out-of-body stage. However, when he used the wind fall dragon howling sky, he relied on Mu Yu's sword chi. He was just a carrier. Therefore, when Mu Yu broke through to the spirit severing stage, Dragon Vine's combat strength was also at the spirit severing stage. Little Handsome's mysterious thunder fall. Little Handsome shouted, not to be outdone. The blue lightning sword in his hand slashed toward Sikong Chiwen. The violent blue sword chi flashed in the air. Countless lightning bolts suddenly fell from the sky and blasted toward Sikong Chiwen. Sikong Chiwen's expression turned serious. Dragon Vine and Little Handsome's attacks were not to be underestimated. The yellow sword chi in his hand swirled and swept up all the yellow sand around him to meet Little Handsome and Dragon Vine. Boom! The sand exploded, the sword light flickered, and the sword chi shot in all directions. The spirit chi in the surroundings surged restlessly and exploded with Sikong Chiwen as the center, spreading in all directions. Everyone had already retreated a few hundred meters, afraid that they would be affected by this violent aura. This level of explosive power was too terrifying. All the out-of-body stage cultivators present felt a chill. This dragon is the dragon vine that Mu Yu rode on floating Immortal Island, right? How can it have such terrifying explosive power? Everyone swallowed their saliva. Those spirit-severing stage cultivators all asked themselves, if they were attacked by Dragon Vine and Little Handsome, it would be difficult for them to win. However, when they stood firm and wanted to look for Muyu, they found that whether it was Muyu or Tianbuchi, they were actually covered by a vast plain. An oasis in the desert. What a powerful array. Everyone was shocked by the plain, but they could not see the shadows of Muyu and Tianbuchi at all. Master Lu and Sichu Yangtian's eyes flashed with array patterns. They had been staring at the vibrant plain in the distance. Only the two of them, Xiantian array masters, could see the battle between Muyu and Tianbuchi at this moment. Muyu had already used the array to envelop Tianbuchi. In the powerful array, Muyu had an absolute advantage. Chapter 541. On the 6th day of the 6th month, there were still 2 hours before noon. Tian Buwai surveyed his surroundings. He felt as if he had left the desert of death, or even the entire desert, and arrived on an open plain. The surrounding flowers and plants were full of vitality, and bees and butterflies danced. It was completely different from the desolate desert. Muyu was on a tree not far away, staring at Tian Buwai. Faint formation patterns rippled around him, faintly discernible. From time to time, ripples would spread out and merge into the void. I look down on formation masters and talisman masters the most in my life because I feel that they are flashy but useless. In my opinion, you are nothing more than that. Tian Buwai tapped his foot lightly and charged towards Muyu. The heavenly astral spear in his hand was incomparably sharp. It suddenly disappeared from Tian Buwai's hand, and when it reappeared, it was only an inch away from Muyu's throat. What fast speed! Muyu frowned slightly. He had seen the heavenly astral spear once when he was in the second heaven. At that time, it was wielded by Tian Yun. Tian Yun, who was in the nascent soul stage, could not unleash the true power of the heavenly astral spear, but it had still caused a lot of trouble for Muyu. Now that it was in Tian Buwai's hands, it was a completely different concept. The power that Tian Buwai could unleash was more than 10,000 times that of that lecherous Tian Yun. The terrifying spear shadows exploded in the air, and in an instant, countless spear shadows appeared. The spear shadows seemed to gather from all directions, enveloping Muyu. The heavenly astral spear's attack speed was very fast, but Muyu's reaction was not slow either. The formation patterns around his body flashed, and the heavenly constellation formation had already teleported him out. In the blink of an eye, he was behind Tian Buwai. The formation patterns in his hand rippled, and the shadow clone sword was already drawn from the void. The dense and sharp sword chi was like a torrential river, gushing out from the tip of the sword and pouring down on Tian Buwai. A shield suddenly appeared behind Tian Buwai, and in an instant, it blocked all of Muyu's sword chi. Tian Buwai had already stepped into the void and disappeared. Void walking was a method of walking that spirit-severing cultivators could achieve, but this method of walking consumed a lot of spiritual power. In fact, it was only because spirit-severing cultivators were extremely fast that they could tear space apart. However, this movement technique was completely different from Muyu's Big Dipper constellation formation. This was because the void walk was about shrinking the ground. The entire person's aura would leave a mark in the air. On the other hand, Muyu's Big Dipper constellation formation directly disappeared from one place and appeared in another place. It would not leave any traces along the way. Muyu coldly snorted. While the two were fighting, they had already locked onto each other's aura. Tian Buyi broke through the void. As soon as he appeared, Muyu's sword chi once again slashed towards Tian Buyi's head. Bang! Without exception, the heavenly star shield appeared at the perfect time in Tian Bushi's hands, protecting him in the blink of an eye. Muyu kicked the heavenly star shield. A powerful spiritual power burst out from his foot and transmitted to the heavenly star shield. However, the heavenly star shield was a very special magic weapon. When Muyu's spiritual power hit the heavenly star shield, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. It did not have any effect on Tian Buyi at all. Muyu borrowed the force of the collision and flipped backwards, disappearing once again. The place where he had been just now was now filled with countless heavenly star spear shadows. Agile swallow returns to nest. Countless black and white swallows flapped their wings and flew rapidly through the air. They covered the sky and covered the earth as they flew towards Qian Buyi. With the current spirit severing stage, Mu Yu could use agile swallow returns to nest to deal with Qian Buyi, who was also in the spirit severing stage. The speed of the swallows he transformed into had reached a terrifying level. As long as Qian Buyi was hit by his formation, Mu Yu would be able to see through Qian Buyi's weak point. Qian Buyi had the powerful heavenly star shield. Its defense was unparalleled. It would be difficult for Mu Yu to break through the heavenly star shield. However, the heavenly star shield on Qian Buyi's body split into countless shadows and instantly enveloped him. Countless swallows pounced on the heavenly star shield and turned into specks of starlight. The heavenly star spear in Qian Buyi's hand carried a powerful spiritual power and destroyed all the swallow's formation runes. I have a way to deal with formations. After all, the entire talisman sect was almost in my pocket. Qian Buyi said coldly. When the talisman sect wanted to annex the array sect, the talisman sect relied on the people from Stargate. Needless to say, Qian Buyi was also one of the masterminds behind it. However, the array sect directly eliminated all the invaders, causing their plan to fail at Stargate. Ding! The Shadow Sword and Heavenly Star Spear collided. Surging spiritual power swept out with the two of them as the center. In an instant, the vast plains were shattered into fragments of formations. The two figures reappeared in front of everyone. Mu Yu's illusion array had been broken by Qian Buyi. The biting cold sword Qi and the invincible spear shadows intertwined. The two figures flashed in the air above the desert of death, turning into numerous afterimages. Countless sparks of formation runes surged, twisting the entire desert of death into flat ground. Give up. My heavenly star shield is indestructible. You will never be able to break my heavenly star shield. Qian Buyi's cultivation was much higher than Mu Yu's. In addition, he had the heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield, which were two peerless treasures. He used them to perfection. Mu Yu couldn't take advantage of him even if he wanted to. Mu Yu had just broken through to the spirit severing stage, but his strength couldn't be estimated according to normal standards. He had the yin and yang primal chaos and could use countless formations to deal with enemies. However, if the formations couldn't be used on Qian Buyi, then it was basically useless. The yin and yang primal chaos could only be used with the formation hall and formation runestone to display its powerful strength. Unfortunately, the formation hall couldn't be carried around. Otherwise, Mu Yu would have used the soul formation to deal with Qian Buyi. Indestructible? I don't think so. Mu Yu took a deep breath. He remembered the formation technique used by Deadwood Daddy. With his cultivation during the Jindan period, he almost killed Qian Buyi, who was at the spirit severing stage. At that time, Deadwood Daddy integrated the power of the exploding core into the formation, allowing the rank 7 exploding core to fully display the attack of the unification stage. That kind of divine power still reverberated in Mu Yu's mind. Deadwood Daddy had always hoped to show off in front of Mu Yu. He wanted to let Mu Yu understand the true strength of his Deadwood Daddy. However, the sneak attack of the Triple Palace made Deadwood Daddy unable to fulfill this wish before he died. This was his wish to show off in front of Mu Yu. Now that Mu Yu had learned a lot about Shen formations, he finally understood how strong Deadwood Daddy was. This kind of extraordinary formation technique was actually impossible to use with the cultivation during the Jindan period. At that time, Deadwood Daddy used his life force as the foundation of the formation. In order to surprise Mu Yu, Deadwood Daddy squandered his remaining life force. Dad, you didn't kill Qian Buyi last time. You must have endless regrets in your heart. Let me help you make up for this regret. 5 rank 7 exploding cores appeared in Mu Yu's hand. A rank 7 exploding core meant that the full power of the unification stage's attack was quite terrifying. This kind of formation technique would burn one's life force, but Mu Yu didn't care so much. Deadwood Daddy's formation technique didn't kill Qian Buyi, so he would use the same formation technique to fulfill Deadwood Daddy's wish. An 8 trigrams formation was formed under Mu Yu's feet and slowly rotated. A powerful aura erupted with Mu Yu as the center. With his current cultivation, the formation technique he displayed was many times stronger than Deadwood Daddy's in the past. The formation pattern slowly wandered in Mu Yu's hand and wrapped around the 5 rank 7 exploding cores. Under the cover of the formation pattern, the exploding cores gradually turned into pure medicinal power and were wrapped by the formation pattern. The rank 7 exploding cores emitted a dazzling golden light, like a bright star, illuminating the entire desert. Then 5 formation pattern vortexes filled with terrifying aura revolved in front of Mu Yu. A huge pressure swept out from the 5 formation pattern vortexes, causing everyone's heart to tremble. This is the attack of the unification stage? Everyone was shocked. They didn't understand why Mu Yu, who had just stepped into the spirit severing stage, could use the formation technique of the unification stage at once. Have you tried to fuse the exploding cores into the formation technique? Master Lu turned to Sichu Yangtian. His face was a little uncertain. Any formation technique that could exceed one's cultivation level must have a huge price to pay. I haven't tried it. This kind of formation technique is too advanced. If one doesn't control the medicinal properties of the exploding cores well, it's easy to hurt oneself. I'm afraid that only alchemists can fully master the exploding cores. Sichu Yangtian pondered for a long time and said seriously. Master Lu nodded slightly. I'm afraid only Mu Yu is both an alchemist and a formation master. Apart from Lu Xianxia and Sichu Yangtian, no one else understood what was going on. They all looked at Mu Yu, who was controlling the 5 vortexes, in surprise and bewilderment. That terrifying aura made everyone smell a trace of danger. Tian Buwai frowned slightly. He naturally recognized this formation technique. When he wanted to capture deadwood evergreen in the woods, he had seen this kind of terrifying pressure. But at that time, he wasn't hit by deadwood evergreen. He didn't even know that someone had interfered with deadwood evergreen and caused him to escape with his life. He just thought that deadwood evergreen was overestimating himself and bluffing. Tian Buwai sneered. What? Are you here to be funny like deadwood evergreen? Mu Yu's hand slightly moved, and he stared at Tian Buwai. You will understand. Powerful formation patterns suddenly spread out from under Mu Yu's feet, instantly enveloping Tian Buwai. Then, the 5 shadow swords scattered from different angles, trembling gently and surrounding Tian Buwai. Tian Buwai wanted to rush out, but he was directly covered by the formation patterns and bounced back. Want to kill me? This formation technique is not enough. Tian Buwai's body was already covered by the shadow of the heavenly astral shield. His heavenly astral spear was also ready, and powerful spiritual energy instantly condensed on the heavenly astral spear. The heavenly astral spear was invincible. With its strength, it could completely shatter the formation barrier Mu Yu used to trap him. But Mu Yu's 5 core explosion rune vortexes had already floated out, fusing into the shadow sword. A terrifying pressure instantly enveloped the area, as if a million mountains were crashing down, causing many people to secretly break out in cold sweat. At the same time, Tian Buwai's heavenly astral spear had already stabbed forward. The tip of the spear and the formation patterns clashed, and countless ripples shot out. Spiritual energy violently splashed in all directions, and the formation pattern barrier was actually covered with dense crack. Hua! Like porcelain shattering, the formation barrier Mu Yu used to trap Tian Buwai had already been broken, and Tian Buwai disappeared from his spot. One of Mu Yu's shadow swords slashed toward Tian Buwai, but Tian Buwai actually dodged it. Mu Yu's expression changed slightly. Back then, Tian Buwai had not been able to rush out of the barrier set up by Deadwood Daddy because Deadwood Daddy had been prepared. He had set up a trap and used a powerful formation to trap Tian Buwai. But now, Mu Yu could not use a powerful trap array in a hurry, and Tian Buwai had actually escaped. Chapter 542. Everyone stared at Mu Yu's shadow clone sword in horror. That sword strike contained the power of a combination stage cultivator. Not only did it strike the desert, but it also struck everyone's chests, making it hard for them to breathe. Mu Yu was only at the out-of-body stage a few days ago. Everyone thought that he wouldn't dare to come here. They didn't expect that he would appear with a spirit-severing stage cultivation. He even forced the young master of Stargate, Tian Bushi, to flee in a sorry state. He also used a terrifying array to launch a combination stage attack. It was said that the disciple of a true god was the person who could create miracles the most. Now, no one dared to question anything. However, Mu Yu's expression was very serious. He felt as if something had been taken away from his body, and his momentum dropped a lot in an instant. The rank 7 exploding pill array had really taken away his vitality. Vitality was the foundation of a person's life. Everyone only had so much vitality. Mu Yu's vitality was more vigorous than that of ordinary people. However, even he felt a little strange, let alone Deadwood Daddy. Although Deadwood Daddy's body had been transformed by the restore pill and he used blood protection shrouding the sky to transfer his vitality to Mu Yu, he didn't have much vitality left. Mu Yu was sure that if Deadwood Daddy let the full power of the exploding pill erupt at that time, he probably wouldn't have lived for more than a few hours. At that time, when Deadwood's father used this formation, he was already prepared to die together with it. This was because it was impossible for him to control this formation with his golden core stage spiritual power. However, he didn't take Tian Bushi away before he died, and he didn't show off in front of Mu Yu. After Tian Bushi flashed out, he didn't retreat. Instead, he turned around and stabbed at Mu Yu with a sharp spear. The array pattern in Mu Yu's hand surged, and the shadow sword was pulled out from the void, blocking the tyrannical heavenly star spear. Then, another shadow sword merged with the exploding pill had been slashed towards Tian Bushi again. Shua. Tian Bui's speed was extremely fast. Once again, he dodged the attack of the form synthesis stage and retreated. However, the powerful shockwave still sent both of them flying. Mu Yu's aura weakened once again. What Mu Yu was losing was not spiritual energy, but life force. Every bit of life force he lost meant that he was getting closer to death. Once one's vitality was depleted to the point where the balance of the 5 elements was broken, one's life would be in danger. He looked at Xiao Shuai and Long Teng. Xiao Shuai and Long Teng were actually fighting Sikong Chiwen. However, Sikong Chiwen clearly had the upper hand and was suppressing Long Teng, who was the main attacker. Big Earthworm, work harder and kill this guy. Little Commander's hair was standing on end from the lightning, but he still waved his hand energetically. Countless sword shadows mixed with lightning fell towards Sikong Chiwu. The entire desert was already full of holes from the lightning sword shadows. Little Mouse, can you give me a little more power with your dark heaven lightning? Long Ting pulled away from Sikong Chiwen and spat out a dragon's breath. Violent sword chi swept towards Sikong Chiwen. This move is called Xiao Shuai's Dark Heaven Lightning. Don't call me by the wrong name again. Otherwise, I will get angry. Xiao Shuai corrected him. Everyone felt that this was inconceivable. Who would have thought that Mu Yu actually had 2 strange helpers by his side? Not only were they strange, but they were also holding back the dark horse of the supreme immortal ranking, Sikong Chiwen. Mu Yu could see that it was impossible for Long Ting and Xiao Shuai to fight a protracted battle with Sikong Chiwen. The two of them were relying on Mu Yu's sword chi and relying on the wind-wind heart linking formation to consume most of Mu Yu's spiritual energy. It was equivalent to Mu Yu using half of his spiritual energy to deal with Sikong Chiwen. This way of fighting was centered around Mu Yu. Once his spiritual energy was depleted, the two of them would be in danger. He couldn't drag this out any longer. Boundless killing intent locked onto Tian Bushi in the distance. After dodging 2 consecutive attacks from Mu Yu, Tian Bushi noticed that Mu Yu's aura was gradually declining. He also understood the weakness of Mu Yu's powerful formation technique. Looks like you're a little exhausted. What's wrong? Is this all that withered tree evergreen's formation technique can do? Tian Bushi sneered as he clashed with Mu Yu again. The two of them exchanged blows and retreated again. Tian Bushi's Heavenly Star Spear and Heavenly Star Shield were both offensive and defensive. He was also very agile. As long as he wasn't hit by Mu Yu's 7th order explosive pills, it was basically impossible for Mu Yu to kill him. In particular, there seemed to be a layer of strange spiritual energy fluctuation around him. This fluctuation didn't belong to the Stargate technique. It was the combined spiritual energy of the people of the 8 gates. This spiritual energy was originally used to deal with Sikong Chiwen, but it was used on Mu Yu by accident. I'll definitely complete Deadwood Daddy's unfinished wish for him. You'll help me, right? Mu Yu pulled out a shadow clone sword from the void and gently stroked it. The shadow clone sword had fought side by side with Mu Yu for so long that it was already connected to him. It was a godly weapon and also a flying sword with emotions. Ever since Feng Haochen gave it to Mu Yu, it had never left Mu Yu. When it was stabbed by Shi Minghui in the second heaven, the powerful tearing force of the teleportation formation couldn't take it away. It broke free on its own and returned to Mu Yu's side. The shadow clone sword gently trembled as if it was responding to Mu Yu. Mu Yu's gaze was very firm. Deadwood Daddy wanted to use this formation technique to prove that he had the ability to be Mu Yu's master, but unfortunately, he couldn't do it. This was also one of Mu Yu's obsessions. He knew that only by using Deadwood Daddy's formation technique to kill Tian Buwai would he be able to fulfill Deadwood Daddy's wish. Do you really think I'll just passively take a beating? Tian Buwai's entire body was covered by the heavenly star shield. His entire aura began to rise. The heavenly star spear in his hand flickered with cold killing intent. The tip of the spear trembled slightly. A faint killing intent surrounded the tip of the spear, causing the air to distort. The heavenly star spear had already merged into the void. Heavenly star 8 directions contradiction. Tian Buwai's entire body was like a shuttle. The 8 heavenly star shields overlapped in front of him. A heavy and thick aura was instantly emitted from the heavenly star shields. It was like a towering mountain in a storm, causing people to want to retreat. The 8 heavenly star shields reflected in everyone's eyes appeared to be indestructible. It was as if nothing in the world could break through them. They represented the supreme absolute defense. Tian Buwai's figure instantly closed the distance between him and Mu Yu. At the same time, a spear suddenly emerged from the center of the shields in his hand. The heavenly star spear was hidden in the heavenly star shields. The world's most indestructible spear and the world's most indestructible shield fused together. The perfect combination of absolute defense and absolute attack. It swept up a gale of sand, so unstoppable and unstoppable. Tian Buwai's move didn't reveal any flaws. Mu Yu couldn't dodge, nor did he have any thoughts of dodging. The shadow sword that had fused with the rank 7 pill explosion formation slightly hummed in his hand. A faint brilliance circulated around the sword. Black and white spirit energy constantly swam around the sword, and countless sword stars flashed within. Then, the remaining 3 shadow swords that had fused with the rank 7 pill explosion formation condensed into one. The monstrous aura was like a ripple on the surface of a calm lake. The ripple grew larger and larger, gradually forming a vortex. Boundless sword chi surged out of the vortex, as if it could crush everything in the world. Mu Yu's eyes flashed with black and white mysterious formation patterns. Within the formation patterns, there were countless sword shadows. Each sword shadow displayed the sword aura of the heavenly sword 9 guides. At a certain moment, all the sword auras suddenly stopped in one direction. The formation patterns wrapped around the sword auras and entangled with each other. Boundless sword chi suddenly spread out. Mu Yu stabbed out with the shadow sword in his hand without any fancy moves. In everyone's eyes, this sword was so simple that it could be blocked without any effort. But when they wanted to block this sword, they suddenly realized that this simple sword had countless changes. They couldn't see through it and didn't know where to block it. The formation drew Mu Yu's life energy from his body and flowed through the shadow sword. A terrifying aura came from the shadow sword. It was as if something was resuscitation in the shadow sword, making it different from the others. 9 heavenly sword 9 guides, 9 return to 1, the combination of absolute defense and absolute attack, the supreme sword formation of the heavenly sword 9 guides. The 2 powerful auras seemed to be able to tear apart the entire desert. The tip of the sword and the tip of the spear easily collided. There was no sound or explosion. Time seemed to freeze at that moment. Mu Yu and Tian Buwai remained in their attacking positions. Neither of them took a step back. Who won? The onlookers swallowed hard. They were shocked by the terrifying moves of the 2. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. No one knew if the true god's disciple Mu Yu or Tian Buwai had the upper hand. But the clash of the spear and sword made them tremble from the depths of their souls. That terrifying scene lingered in their mind. Boom! Countless formation patterns, sword chi, and spear shadows violently scattered in all directions. All the sand beneath their feet was reduced to the most primitive powder. A large crater appeared in the ground. Even the flowing sand of the death desert instantly evaporated. Mu Yu's face instantly paled. His aura rapidly declined. It was as if something had been sucked out of him. A terrifying aura of death spread through his body. He was like an old man past his prime. There wasn't the slightest bit of vitality in him. The rank 7 Dan explosion array had almost sucked away half of his life force. However, Tian Buwai's expression didn't change. His aura was also maintained at its strongest state. That attack just now didn't seem to have consumed much of his energy. It was a stark contrast to Mu Yu's weakened state. Tian Buwai won? This was the thought in everyone's mind. In everyone's opinion, this battle had exhausted most of Mu Yu's energy. In terms of aura, he was no longer comparable to Stargate's young gatemaster, Tian Buwai. Everyone felt a trace of pity for Mu Yu. This young man who could create miracles the most, and was even the disciple of a famous true god, had ultimately lost to the indestructible heavenly star spear and indestructible heavenly star shield. Catcher! A faint cracking sound suddenly and clearly entered everyone's ears. This sound was so faint that it was almost inaudible. However, everyone present had extremely sensitive ears. Their eyes widened in shock as they looked at the heavenly astral spear in shock and disbelief. Countless cracks gradually covered the heavenly spear and then spread down to the heavenly star shield. Crash! The heavenly spear and heavenly star shield that were known as the strongest weapons in the world actually turned into fragments that filled the sky. It was so dazzling in everyone's eyes. Tian Buwai raised his head in disbelief. Looking at the weakened Mu Yu, Tian Buwai's eyes were filled with shock and anger. Chapter 543. Impossible. How could my heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield shatter? Tian Buwai roared furiously. The heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield were the supreme treasures of the Stargate. They were divine objects that had been passed down for a long time. Nothing had ever been able to leave a mark on them, let alone destroy them. The spear and shield had both offensive and defensive capabilities. In the history of the Stargate, their glorious achievements could be traced back. Let alone a body integration stage cultivator, even a tribulation passing stage cultivator might not be able to destroy them. However, at this moment, they had turned into fragments that filled the sky and scattered in the dust. It was so laughable. Treasures are powerful because of the user, not because the user is powerful because of the treasures. Do you think that just by relying on the heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield and your father's help, you can defeat a few extreme immortals? Besides, in terms of the power of treasures, my shadow clone sword is thousands of times stronger than yours. The shadow clone sword was one of the 9 heavenly swords of Jianying Chen Feng. It was a divine weapon that defeated 5 spirit lords Yumeng. It was far more precious than the heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield. Mu Yu calmly looked at the shattering of the heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield. He was not surprised at all. The heavenly star spear and heavenly star shield might be indestructible, but the shadow clone sword in Mu Yu's hand was a rare treasure. When Mu Yu's life force was absorbed by the formation and flowed into the shadow clone sword, he clearly felt that the shadow clone sword seemed to come alive. What surprised him the most was that he actually saw Xiao Shuai's figure in the shadow clone sword. In the distance, Xiao Shuai raised his head in confusion. In the past, he had always been in a daze. He had never felt close to Mu Yu's shadow clone sword. However, when Mu Yu's life force flowed into the shadow clone sword, he felt an unprecedented joy. It was as if some frozen memory in his body had been awakened. Was Xiao Shuai really related to the shadow clone sword? Mu Yu looked at Xiao Shuai, who was controlling the dark sky lightning in the wind-wind-heart linking formation, and felt very surprised. Xiao Shuai was a foodie who only knew how to open his mouth. Not only did he know how to use the sword formation, but he also knew about the 9 heavenly sword guides. This was already very unusual. At this moment, he could even see Xiao Shuai's figure in the shadow clone sword. However, Mu Yu didn't think too much about it because the time for revenge was right in front of him. Boom! The originally silent shadow sword suddenly erupted with a powerful sword chi again, exploding in the heavenly astral spear and heavenly astral shield fragments. It swept down and directly annihilated the entire person. But Heaven Doesn't Wait didn't dodge at all. On the contrary, his face was filled with hatred and determination. "You're the first one to force me to this extent." Tian Buwai's body suddenly erupted with powerful spiritual energy fluctuations like a volcanic eruption. His aura was rising steadily. He stretched out his right index finger and crossed it in front of his chest. The blood-red light formed the shape of the Big Dipper. It was strange and enchanting, like the afterglow of the setting sun. Then, Tian Buwai pointed his finger, and a rainbow light shot out from the Big Dipper in front of him, meeting Mu Yu's sword chi. That rainbow light swayed through the air, as if it had shattered the void, causing the surrounding spiritual energy to begin to distort. As it shot out, circles of ripples revolved around the rainbow light, gradually expanding, and a terrifying tearing force spread out. Swoosh! The sword chi and the rainbow light collided, and both of them retreated at the same time. Mu Yu knew that he had missed a good opportunity. As the young master of Stargate, how could Tian Buwai only have the heavenly astral spear and heavenly astral shield? When I fight with others, I never need to use my 7 stars brilliant moon. You're the first person lucky enough to see my 7 stars brilliant moon, Tian Buwai said coldly. The supreme technique of Stargate, a secret technique that only the Gate Master could learn, the 7 stars brilliant moon. The stars revolved around the moon, using one's spiritual energy to communicate with the power of the stars in the world and transform it for one's own use. It was a technique that was feared in the cultivation world. It was said that the 7 stars brilliant moon could strengthen one's body for a short period of time, allowing one to explode with destructive power. It was more than enough to smash a mountain range with one punch. I don't care. Mu Yu's eyes were filled with monstrous killing intent. His body moved, and the shadow clone sword appeared again. With a slash, he broke through mountains and rivers and charged forward bravely. At this moment, his body was in a terrible state, but the black and white spiritual energy in his body had been healing his wounds. If not for this mutated spiritual energy, he probably wouldn't have been able to hold on. The Big Dipper star formation in Tian Buwai's hand dispersed, and every blood-red star merged into his body. His palms, elbows, and shoulders shone with starlight, and the star in his heart was especially dazzling. He clenched his right fist and fearlessly met Mu Yu's sword chi with a punch, using his physical body to fight the sword chi. Clang! The sound of metal colliding rang out. Tian Buwai's body seemed to have turned into a killing machine, incomparably tough. When he collided with Mu Yu's shadow clone sword, his body glowed red, and a powerful force exploded from his body. It traveled along the shadow clone sword to Mu Yu's wrist. Mu Yu frowned slightly. This force smashed into his wrist like a collapsing mountain, causing the bones in his wrist to be dislocated and even crack. The 7 stars brilliant moon gave Tian Buwai such terrifying power. Mu Yu couldn't hold on to the shadow clone sword anymore. His hand loosened, and the shadow clone sword was sent flying. However, the formation runes flashed, and the shadow clone sword merged into the void. Mu Yu teleported behind Tian Buwai and kicked his head. Bang! Mu Yu's foot landed solidly on the back of Tian Buwai's head, but he felt as if his foot had kicked a steel plate. Tian Buwai didn't move at all. On the contrary, a powerful force surged out of his body, completely repelling Mu Yu's force. No one in the spirit severing stage has ever been able to hurt me. You can't either. Tian Buwai twisted his wrist, grabbed Mu Yu's foot, and gripped it tightly. Mu Yu gritted his teeth. He felt as if the bones in his foot had been broken. He raised his left hand, and 2 shadow clone swords stabbed at Tian Buwai's face from different directions. Tian Buwai had no choice but to let go and block the shadow clone swords. Mu Yu also took the opportunity to withdraw. Mu Yu quietly floated in the air. The black power in his body was rapidly devouring his injured bones, while the white spirit power was constantly repairing Mu Yu's injuries. The cracks in his bones were gradually mending, and the pain gradually disappeared. Although most of Tian Buwai's achievements were obtained with the help of his father, it was undeniable that Tian Buwai had abilities that he could be proud of. "You want to kill me? I'm afraid you don't have the qualifications." The 7-star clusters on Tian Buwai's body shone, making him look extremely demonic. These 7-star clusters used a special method to protect his meridians and bones. It was like an indestructible body, making Mu Yu feel a great deal of pressure. Tian Buwai punched again. The wind from his fist crushed the yellow sand, turning it into the purest force. Mu Yu's shadow clone swords wrapped around the formation pattern. The formation pattern agilely shook in the air like rippling water, guiding Tian Buwai's fist wind to the right. A pitch-black vortex appeared on the formation pattern on the right, swallowing Tian Buwai's powerful force. At the same time, the formation pattern on Mu Yu's hand appeared again. A white vortex appeared in front of Tian Buwai's chest. It was the complete opposite of the force that swallowed Tian Buwai. The white vortex erupted, and a powerful fist wind surged from the white vortex toward Tian Buwai. Tian Buwai frowned. He shattered the white vortex's fist wind with one punch, shattering the white vortex along with it. Wind shifting flowers into trees formation. It used the black vortex to absorb the opponent's attack, and then used the white vortex to counterattack. This formation was very taxing on Mu Yu's body. This was because he had to be able to withstand this force. Otherwise, he would be hit by the formation's backlash if he wasn't careful during the shifting process. He couldn't shift too many times in this kind of battle because Tian Buwai's punches were getting more and more terrifying. Mu Yu panted heavily. The battle with Tian Buwai just now had consumed a lot of his spiritual power. Not only that, but because he had used a forbidden technique that burned his life force was rapidly depleting. His body's reaction time was getting worse and worse. The 7 stars on Tian Buwai's body lit up from time to time. Every time it lit up, a rainbow light would shoot out with powerful killing intent toward Mu Yu with the force of a thunderbolt. Each rainbow light carried a destructive aura and was unstoppable. Mu Yu didn't dare to block it. This rainbow light was too overbearing. He could clearly feel the destructive power contained in it. It was comparable to an attack from a combination stage cultivator. Mu Yu couldn't block it. However, after each rainbow light was used, Tian Buwai's aura would drop for a moment, as if he was decaying and becoming chaotic. Clearly, he couldn't completely control a powerful technique like 7 stars Brilliant Moon. Or rather, this was the flaw of 7 stars Brilliant Moon. As long as he took advantage of the moment when Tian Buwai was weakened after using the rainbow light, he would definitely be able to defeat him. However, the power of the rainbow light was too strong. Mu Yu wanted to dodge it, but it was also quite difficult. Mu Yu gritted his teeth and gathered 5 7th-order explosive pills in his hand again. If he wanted to fight against the rainbow light, he could only choose to meet force with force. Using the 7th-order explosive pills had a great impact on him. At this moment, Mu Yu had no choice but to make a killing blow. He integrated all the medicinal power of the 7th-order explosive pills into the array pattern. The array pattern trembled violently and the golden light bloomed again. Mu Yu took a Bone Emperor pill. The Bone Emperor pill could withstand the attack of a spirit-severing stage cultivator without being injured. Although the rainbow light on Tian Buwai's body already had the power of a combination stage cultivator, the power of the Bone Emperor pill could still offset some of the impact. The explosive pills were all integrated into the Shadow Sword. The Shadow Sword trembled and a powerful force emerged again. Mu Yu's little remaining life force was once again sucked away. The Shadow Sword seemed to come alive in an instant. It absorbed Mu Yu's life force and emitted a powerful sword intent. After the Shadow Sword absorbed Mu Yu's life force several times in a row, its power seemed to be even stronger than before. At this time, the rainbow light on Tian Buwai's body lit up again. The Shadow Sword flashed with a blue light. It was like cold autumn water, suffused with a lonely cold light. It seemed to have undergone some kind of change. On the sword body, mysterious patterns surged. Mu Yu had never seen these patterns before. It seemed to be activated by Mu Yu's life force. Then, the shadow sword became incomparably illusory, as if it had lost its form. However, such an illusory sword was mixed with the brilliant might of heaven. The blue light bloomed and the sword light was tens of thousands of feet long. It collided with Tian Buwai's rainbow light. Boom! Violent gales rose in all directions, and yellow sand flew everywhere. Terrifying fluctuations shot out. Tian Buwai's eyes widened in shock and anger. His insufferably arrogant rainbow light was split apart by the shadow sword. It was crushed and pointed at Tian Buwai's chest. In a moment of desperation, Tian Buwai raised his hands and crossed them in front of him. The two clusters of stars on his wrists emitted a dazzling light. They intertwined in front of him, wanting to block Mu Yu's shadow sword. However, he had underestimated the power of the shadow sword. Kai! Tian Buwai's right hand was cut off at the wrist by the shadow sword. Mu Yu's sword turned and aimed at Tian Buwai's throat. Tian Buwai was in extreme pain. His face was ashen. He could only watch as the killing intent of the shadow sword enveloped him. He had no time to react. How dare you? Chapter 544. An old man at the form synthesis stage suddenly rushed out from the crowd, and a majestic pressure immediately covered Mu Yu. Tian Jiancheng, the elder of Stargate, was the elder who had been ordered to protect Tian Bushi. Originally, he had thought that it would be easy for Tian Bushi to defeat Sikong Chiwen or Mu Yu with the Heavenly Star Spear and Heavenly Star Shield. He had thought that he wouldn't need to do anything at all, and that Tian Bushi would be able to solve all the problems. However, he hadn't expected that the Heavenly Star Spear and Heavenly Star Shield would be destroyed. Even the 7 stars brilliant moon that Stargate was so proud of couldn't defeat Mu Yu. Tian Bushi was about to be killed by Mu Yu. Tian Bushi couldn't hold back any longer and immediately attacked. Tian Jiancheng shouted angrily and slapped Mu Yu. His soul-stirring spiritual power instantly turned into a monstrous giant palm, and everyone's expression changed. Mu Yu couldn't take this palm in his current state. Stargate was so shameless. This was supposed to be a battle between two extreme celestials, but they still relied on their elders to intervene. Mu Yu's eyes turned cold. He didn't dare to be careless when facing a form synthesis stage cultivator. However, he had to kill Tian Bushi, no matter who his opponent was. Only when Tian Bushi was dead could he avenge Deadwood Daddy. He gritted his teeth, and the runes in his hand surged. Mu Ling's sword was suddenly wrapped by the runes, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a lush forest in front of him, which was particularly eye-catching in the desolate desert. All the leaves of the towering trees had fallen off, and turned into thousands of phantoms, which rushed toward Tian Jiancheng's giant palm. Tian Jiancheng's gigantic palm came crashing down like an avalanche. He didn't hold back at all. He clearly wanted to kill Mu Yu. However, countless tree shadows flickered and intertwined under the giant palm and were destroyed by the spiritual power of the form synthesis stage. However, an endless stream of green shadows grew again. Thousands of leaves grew endlessly and were annihilated, but more tree shadows grew, weakening the power of the giant palm bit by bit. Unfortunately, the attack of a form synthesis stage cultivator was too powerful. Before Mu Yu could kill Tian Bushi in time, he was sent flying backward and fell heavily on the sand dune. Tian Jiancheng raised his palm again. Tian Jiancheng, how dare you interfere in a battle between extreme immortals? Aren't you afraid that the Sanchong Palace will punish you? Master Lu and Situ Yangtian shouted angrily and rushed out. The incomparably powerful formation instantly blocked in front of Mu Yu. Master Lu rushed to Mu Yu's side and helped Mu Yu up. Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhexing also wanted to rush over, but they were imprisoned in place by Master Lu's formation. Their cultivation was too low. If they rushed over rashly, it would be easy for them to get into trouble. Mu Yu, are you all right? Master Lu's face was also full of anger. He transferred his spiritual power into Mu Yu's body to help Mu Yu recover from his injuries. However, he was somewhat shocked to see that Mu Yu's aura was very old at this moment, as if he had entered his twilight years. He was much older than Master Lu. Although his appearance hadn't changed, the aura of his twilight years was wandering around his body, as if he would die in the next moment. You shouldn't have used your vitality to activate the formation. Master Lu was very angry. Compared to Tian Genqing's interference, the terrible situation in Mu Yu's body worried him more. There are some things that I must do. Mu Yu stared at Tian Bushui, who was being protected behind Tian Genqing. For example, killing Tian Bushui. However, Mu Yu still couldn't kill Tian Bushui with his own hands. The people of Stargate had interfered in this competition. He knew from the beginning that with Tian Bushui's identity, there would definitely be experts around to protect him. Therefore, when they fought, he wanted to use the formation to envelop Tian Bushui. Through the camouflage of the formation, the people of Stargate wouldn't be able to see the situation between him and Tian Bushui. Unfortunately, Tian Bushui wasn't an ordinary person. He directly broke free from Mu Yu's formation. Mu Yu could have killed his enemy with his own hands, but he couldn't do it. One could imagine the anger in his heart. You're too shameless. How can Stargate interfere in a competition between supreme immortals? That's right. The Sanchong strictly forbids people over the age of 40 from interfering in the competition between the supreme immortals. You've already violated the rules. I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen anyone as shameless as you. You said it was a one-on-one fight, but you actually interfered. Life and death in a competition between supreme immortals is up to fate. How can your young master of Stargate be an exception? If you can't afford to play, then don't stay on the supreme immortals leaderboard. Get out of here. Get out of here. All the self-cultivators began to curse loudly. Without exception, they began to loudly criticize Tian Genqing's actions. In their opinion, Stargate relied on their elders to interfere in this matter, which undoubtedly violated the fairness of the Supreme Immortals leaderboard. It was despicable. However, Tian Genqing turned a deaf ear to the curses around him. He supported his young master with a gloomy face. At this moment, Tian Bushui's right wrist had been cut off at the base. The broken wrist had also been minced by the sword energy. There was no way to reattach it. However, he wasn't worried. As long as he had the intermittent grass, he could find a self-cultivator whose right hand was compatible with Tian Bushui's and cut off their hand to reattach it. This wasn't the first time they'd done something like this. When Tian Yun's leg was cut off by Mu Yu, they'd also done the same thing to turn him back into a normal person. But none of this was important. Tian Bushui's main concern was that he was furious. This was because Tian Bushui was the successor of the next Gate Master. He had extraordinary talent. If he was given time to grow, he would definitely be able to shoulder the heavy responsibility of the Gate Master in the future. In fact, the Gate Master of Stargate, Tian Yuhen, sent Qingming the Shadow Killer not to kill Mu Yu, but to seriously injure Mu Yu. This way, Mu Yu wouldn't be able to use his full strength when fighting with Tian Bushui, and he would be killed by Tian Bushui. Tian Yuhen had spent a lot of money to promote his son in the world of self-cultivators. Most of the people who had been defeated by Tian Bushui in the past had been secretly injured by Qingming the Shadow Killer beforehand, so they lost to Tian Bushui. Stargate's status in the world of self-cultivators was prominent, and no one dared to provoke them. Tian Yuhen didn't need his son to grow up in life-and-death battles. What he needed was to create an invincible gimmick for his son. As long as this gimmick existed, he would naturally be able to shock everyone in the world of self-cultivators when he inherited the position of Gate Master in the future. If it weren't for the mysterious origin of Sikong Chiwen, and the shadowy men's offer of a price that Tian Yuhen couldn't accept, Sikong Chiwen would have also become the target of Qingming the Shadow Killer. Therefore, Tian Yuhen could only take a step back and encourage people from other sects to help Tian Bushui fight against Sikong Chiwen, and let Qingming the Shadow Killer deal with Mu Yu. However, Tian Yuhen's plan still failed. Qingming, who was feared by everyone, was actually defeated by Mu Yu, which was unexpected. Tian Bushui planned to kill Mu Yu himself and establish his prestige in the world of self-cultivators, but his right hand was cut off by Mu Yu, and he was completely defeated. When Tian Jiancheng saw Lu Xianxia and Sichu Yangtian appear, he didn't continue to attack Mu Yu. Instead, he helped Tian Bushui up and began to heal him. Although Lu Xianxia and Sichu Yangtian were only at the spirit severing stage, they were still powerful array masters. 2 spirit severing stage innate array masters were no match for him, but they were more than enough to delay him for a while. He was worried that someone would take this opportunity to attack Tian Bushui, so he didn't act rashly at this moment. My young master has already lost. I didn't kill Mu Yu, I just saved my own people. How can I break the rules of the Supreme Immortal list? On the other hand, were all the disciples of true gods so ruthless? Why don't you let him go after winning? Do you have to kill him? Tian Jiancheng shouted. This old man still had the face to slander him. How shameless are you to say such words? Didn't Tian Bushui say that he wanted to kill Mu Yu at the beginning? Why can't you allow Mu Yu to kill Tian Bushui? Is Stargate a sore loser? Lu Xianxia replied angrily. If you can't afford to lose, then hide in a mouse hole in the future. Save yourself from making a fool of yourself. In a battle between supreme immortals, life and death are determined by fate. It's normal for a supreme immortal to kill a supreme immortal. Can you Stargate not be so shameless? Everyone had already started cursing. The heavenly star sect's actions had made everyone very angry. At the beginning, Tian Bushui was still elegantly discussing with Sikong Chiwen who could take Mu Yu's life and take Mu Yu's life as a trophy. But who would have thought that the originally arrogant Tian Bushui would be completely defeated by Mu Yu like a crippled dog? He even needed to rely on his elders to save his life. What a naked irony. Tian Jiancheng said coldly, Stargate has never been afraid of anyone. How can the life of my young master be compared to the life of a group of people like you? If there's anyone who's not convinced, you can stand up. Stargate will accompany you to the end. The pressure of a body fusion stage cultivator spread out again and heavily pressed down on everyone's hearts. His eyes were like lightning. Every self-cultivator who was swept by his gaze couldn't help but take a step back and didn't dare to speak again. Stargate's tone was so arrogant. However, the arrogance of the heavenly star sect was well known in the cultivation world. They had the capital and strength to be arrogant. Even if they had provoked public anger by interfering with the competition, none of the onlookers were fools. No one dared to be the first to stand out. Being the first to stand out meant that they would be remembered by the Colossus Stargate. No one wanted to be targeted by this kind of shameless jackal, wolf, tiger, and leopard. Everyone was angry but didn't dare to say anything. Even the battle between Longting Xiao Shuai and Sikong Chiwen in the distance had stopped. The two of them quickly returned to Mu Yu's side. Xiao Shuai had already begun to surge the surrounding spiritual energy, wrapping it around Mu Yu's body. Mu Ling's sword fell in front of Mu Yu. Master Lu and Sichu Yangtian looked at each other and then looked at Mu Ling's sword that had transformed into thousands of tree shadows just now. They were shocked. Everyone thought that the tree shadows just now were transformed by an array, but Master Lu and Sichu Yangtian were both experienced array masters. How could they not see that it wasn't an array at all? Those array patterns were just camouflage for the trees. Only Mu Yumeng could create these tree shadows. Both of them showed a trace of surprise and uncertainty in their eyes. They thought of the 5 people who were rumored to be related to Mu Yumeng in the third continent. Could it be that Mu Yu was also one of them? However, Master Lu and Sichu Yangtian both pursed their lips and chose to ignore this matter. In any case, Mu Yu was the leader of the Array Talisman sect. This was enough. The Heavenly Star sect is really impressive. You dare to interfere in the competition between us 3 supreme immortals? Sikong Chiwen said slowly. He raised his head and looked at the sun. It was less than a quarter of an hour away from noon. A strange smile suddenly appeared at the corner of his mouth. From the beginning to the end of this competition, he had been looking at the sun in the sky and calculating the time, as if he was waiting for something. Even when he was fighting Xiao Shuai and Long Teng, he was calm and relaxed, as if he was deliberately stalling for time. Chapter 545. After Sikong Chiwen stepped out, the atmosphere suddenly became very quiet. Only the yellow sand was whistling in the sky, which made the atmosphere seem a little bleak. Today, everyone came to the Death Desert to watch the fight between Sikong Chiwen and Tian Buchi. Originally, no one had any hope for Mu Yu. However, things developed beyond their expectations. Not only did Mu Yu directly defeat Tian Buchi, but he also relied on two powerful spiritual beasts to hold back Sikong Chiwen. This mysterious young man was not only a genius of the Danding sect, but also a powerful array master. He also had powerful demonic beasts like the Earthly Emperor sect. He also had superb swordsmanship. The disciple of a true god really lived up to his name. In everyone's eyes, even with Sikong Chiwen's strength, he was still held back by Mu Yu's two demonic beasts. This meant that if Sikong Chiwen really fought with Mu Yu one-on-one, he would have no chance of winning. Although Sikong Chiwen was a dark horse on the Supreme Immortal list, if they really fought, he might not be a match for Mu Yu. However, Mu Yu was now seriously injured, and one of Mu Yu's hands was chopped off by Tian Buchi. Sikong Chiwen would be the final winner of this battle. Sikong Chiwen ignored everyone's gaze. He just looked coldly at Tian Jiancheng and sneered, "Your Stargate has interfered with the affairs of the Supreme Immortals. Today, you don't have to go back alive." The surrounding self-cultivators were in an uproar. Everyone looked at Sikong Chiwen in surprise. Tian Jiancheng was at the form synthesis stage of the Stargate. No matter how outstanding Sikong Chiwen was, he was only at the spirit severing stage. Where did he get the confidence to kill Tian Jiancheng? What? Do you think you can stop me? Tian Jiancheng looked at Sikong Chiwen with disdain, as if he had heard a very funny joke. He was a master at the form synthesis stage. This was the first time that a spirit-severing stage cultivator dared to threaten him like this. Even other self-cultivators at the body integration stage wouldn't dare to talk to him like that. As a member of Stargate, he was never afraid of anyone in the world of self-cultivators. Tian Jiancheng helped Tian Buchi up and took out a healing pill to stop his bleeding. Stargate can easily wipe out a small Sikong family like yours. Heaven-budding Heaven's face was as white as a sheet. He looked at Mu Yu with eyes full of hatred. The young master of Stargate had one of his hands chopped off by Mu Yu in front of so many people. This was a great humiliation. Even Shadows Lei and Ming Ming don't dare to provoke me. Who do you think you are? Let's see how you're going to escape today, Sikong Chiwen said with an arrogant smile. But in the eyes of the onlookers, his threat seemed a little exaggerated. Sikong Chiwen might be powerful, but he didn't have any backing. How could he compare to a giant like Stargate? Even if Sikong Chiwen had the protection of the Supreme Immortal Law, Stargate could easily eliminate the Sikong family in Clearwater City without Sikong Chiwen's help. Tian Jiancheng's heart sank. He knew that Sikong Chiwen was right. The Shadow Killer organization dared to accept Mu Yu's mission but offered a sky-high price to assassinate Sikong Chiwen. This meant that the Shadow Killer organization knew some secrets about Sikong Chiwen that even the Eight Gates didn't know about. But Tian Jiancheng was still not afraid. No matter how powerful Sikong Chiwen's secret was, how could he fight against the entire Stargate alone? If I, Tian Jiancheng, want to leave, who can stop me? Tian Jiancheng's body exploded with a powerful spiritual force. Today, none of you can leave, Sikong Chiwen said with a sinister smile. He looked up at the sky. It was almost noon. Everyone saw Sikong Chiwen's smile and couldn't help but shiver. The Death Gobi was located in the middle of the desert. The temperature here was terrifyingly high. Even if self-cultivators had spiritual force to protect their bodies, they would still feel the heat. But when they saw Sikong Chiwen's smile, they felt a burst of gloomy coldness that made their hair stand on end. But everyone thought that it was just an illusion. Although they didn't know what technique Sikong Chiwen used to improve his cultivation by leaps and bounds, everyone knew his background. Sikong Chiwen only had the Sikong family behind him. The Sikong family was originally a second-rate family in Clearwater City. They only rose because of Sikong Chiwen. With Sikong Chiwen's ability, how could he keep Tian Jiancheng and Tian Buho? Brat, Let's see what you have to keep us here. Tian Jiancheng's aura kept fluctuating. The pressure of the body fusion stage was like a monstrous wave, making people's hearts palpitate. It seemed like a good show was about to start. But little Shuai jumped onto Mu Yu's shoulder and looked at Sikong Chiwen in the distance. He whispered, Mu Yu, I think that Sikong Chiwen is a bit strange. When he was fighting with us just now, he didn't use his full strength at all. There were a few times when he could have beaten us back, but he didn't. When he was fighting with us, he was watching the two of you fight with ease. He also looked up at the time from time to time. He seems to be waiting for something. Waiting for what? Mu Yu's heart skipped a beat. Sikong Chiwen's rise had always been speculated by people. Most of the people here were actually here for him. A few days ago, when he met Bai Yutian once said that on the 6th day of every month, Sikong Chiwen's cultivation would mysteriously increase. Moreover, the Death Gobi was where Sikong Chiwen went missing. It was also because of that disappearance that Sikong Chiwen seemed to have become a different person. What was Sikong Chiwen waiting for? Was he waiting for his cultivation to increase again? Mu Yu looked up at the sun. It was getting closer and closer to noon. Master Lu, Master Situ, are my grandfather and father here too? Mu Yu asked. Yes, but they are in the crowd. I didn't let them come over. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to take care of them if something happened, Master Lu replied. You two go protect them. I have a feeling that something is going to happen. Mu Yu looked at Sikong Chiwen's increasingly strange smile and felt that something was wrong. But you are more important. Don't worry, nothing will happen to me. With the two of them around, my hands and feet will be tied. Hurry up and bring them back to Clearwater City. Long Teng and Little Marshall will protect me. This is an order. Mu Yu said without hesitation. Master Lu and Situ Yangtian looked at each other. Mu Yu was their sect master. His words were orders to them. They could only nod helplessly. Then, they flew towards Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhaxing and left with them. The others didn't care about Master Lu and Situ Yangtian's departure. Everyone's attention was on Sikong Chiwen and Tian Jiancheng. Sikong Chiwen wasn't afraid of Tian Jiancheng, who was in the body fusion stage. He even had a trace of ridicule on his face. Why did Sikong Chiwen dare to look down on Tian Jiancheng? Tian Jiancheng felt very uncomfortable under Sikong Chiwen's gaze. He thought that he was being paranoid. He was a body fusion stage cultivator. Even if he couldn't kill an extreme immortal, he could still leave this place calmly. The onlookers kept pointing at them. Tian Jiancheng didn't want to stay any longer. He planned to leave with Tian Buqi. You interfered with the competition between us three extreme immortals. You have to leave your life behind. The sword in Sikong Chiwen's hand flashed with yellow light. He pointed at Tian Jiancheng. Suddenly, his aura kept rising. This aura was rising so fast that it caught everyone off guard. They were horrified to find that there was a terrible power rioting in Sikong Chiwen's body. It was as if something was trying to break free from his body. When the sun finally reached noon, Sikong Chiwen's expression showed a trace of fanaticism. From cold to fanaticism, Sikong Chiwen's expression made everyone feel a little incredulous. However, at this moment, the whole desert was suddenly swept by a violent sandstorm. However, the most unbelievable thing was that Sikong Chiwen's cultivation had unexpectedly skyrocketed. 6th heaven of spirit separation stage. 7th heaven of spirit separation stage. 8th heaven of spirit separation stage. 9th heaven of spirit separation stage. 1st heaven of body fusion stage. Sikong Chiwen was like a hot knife through butter. Those cultivation barriers that had troubled so many people were like window paper to him. He could break them with a single poke. How can a person's cultivation increase so fast? Everyone was stunned. They all looked at Sikong Chiwen in disbelief. Tian Jiancheng's expression finally changed. Sikong Chiwen's breakthrough was so fast that no one in the world could increase their cultivation as fast as him. However, Sikong Chiwen's cultivation was still skyrocketing. It was very strange. The cold killing intent on his body was also getting stronger and stronger. Everyone felt that something was shrouding them and suppressing their bodies. What's going on? Has Sikong Chiwon been hiding his cultivation all this time? Mu Yu frowned. His first reaction was that Sikong Chiwon had been a body synthesis stage cultivator for a long time. He was just pretending to be weak. However, this didn't make sense. One's cultivation couldn't be hidden from the extreme immortal ranking. No matter how Mu Yu disguised himself, his true cultivation would always be shown on the extreme immortal ranking board. Sikong Chiwon was no exception. This could only mean that Sikong Chiwon was a real spirit-severing stage cultivator in the past. However, such a strange change happened to him today. This really shocked everyone. Sikong Chiwon's cultivation had never increased like this before. What was Sikong Chiwon relying on? Could it be that there was some secret hidden in this death desert? Everyone was shocked and doubtful. However, Sikong Chiwon had already moved. He was very fast. His yellow sword was heavy and thick. In the blink of an eye, he was above Tian Jiancheng. Then, he slashed down at Tian Jiancheng. Tian Jiancheng's expression changed slightly. A fierce giant palm appeared in his hand and met Sikong Chiwon's flying sword head-on. Boom! The giant palm and the flying sword collided. A terrifying shockwave exploded with the two of them as the center. The battle between body synthesis stage cultivators instantly sent everyone flying. That heaven-destroying and earth-annihilating strike was so terrifying that it exceeded everyone's imagination. Mu Yu's body and hands surged with runes. A black and white barrier appeared around him and enveloped him. But even so, the huge fluctuations had already caused his array technique to be on the verge of collapse. After everyone stood firm, they looked at the two people who were fighting. Everyone's expression changed greatly. Tian Jiancheng was lying on the ground under Sikong Chiwon's feet. With just one move, the Heavenly Star Sect's body integration stage elder, Tian Jiancheng, had already fallen to the ground. How was this possible? Is he a human or a ghost? Everyone was shocked by Sikong Chiwon. Sikong Chiwon's cultivation was only at the spirit-severing stage. How could his cultivation suddenly soar so fast? It was unbelievable. Not to mention that he had killed the arrogant Tian Jiancheng with just a single blow. What the hell happened? Mu Yu was also very surprised. This was beyond the scope of ordinary people's understanding. How did Sikong Chiwon break through to the form synthesis stage? How did he defeat Tian Jiancheng? However, the weirder thing was still to come. The sandstones of the death desert that had been destroyed by Mu Yu gradually reappeared from the dust as if they were summoned by something. They reassembled and gradually restored the original appearance of the rock wall. Around the Gobi Desert of Death, sand began to flow like flowing water, surging and leaping. The deep groove created by Mu Yu's shadow sword also began to heal. What's going on? Is this an illusion array? Many people were dumbfounded as they looked at the death desert that had been restored to its original appearance. They were extremely shocked. Mu Yu stood up abruptly. He caught a trace of a familiar aura from the death desert. This was not an illusion array at all, nor was it any kind of array technique. Next will be the funeral in the desert. None of the 200,000 cultivators will be able to get away. Sikong Chiwon licked his lips and put on a sour smile. Chapter 546. The noon sun scorched the sand dunes, as if it wanted to burn the entire desert. In the depths of the desert, far away from the 200,000 self-cultivators, three figures appeared on a sand dune. They were Chengyang, Luo Shong, and Shimen Wuji. Chengyang squatted down and grabbed a handful of sand under his feet. The sand slowly slid down his fingertips. His face was very grim. Luring the tiger away from the mountain, the problem is serious. We have to hurry to Mu Yu's place, Luo Shong said in a deep voice. For the first time, Shimen Wuji withdrew his cynical smile and followed Chengyang and Luo Shong to the death desert without saying a word. Near the death desert. The desert was vast and boundless, with no end in sight. Only the oasis, Clearwater City, was located in the center of the desert. At this moment, there were 20 places in the desert where countless self-cultivators had gathered. These self-cultivators relied on the mirage array set up by Master Lu and Situ Yangtian to watch the scene in the Death Desert from afar. The 200,000 self-cultivators, without exception, saw how Sikong Chiwen's cultivation suddenly skyrocketed and how he defeated Tian Jiancheng, who was at the body integration stage, with one blow. Then, the terrifying laughter clearly vibrated in everyone's ears, making them shiver. What did a desert funeral mean? Many self-cultivators stared at each other in confusion. They didn't understand what Sikong Chiwen was talking about, but they also suddenly felt a strong sense of crisis in their hearts. This sense of crisis came so quickly that even they didn't understand why it appeared. A sandstorm had already started in the desert. Yellow sand began to fly all over the sky, drifting in all directions. A sandstorm wasn't something to be afraid of for self-cultivators. Anyone with a little bit of cultivation knew how to deal with a sandstorm. It was impossible for them to be affected by a sandstorm. Everyone's body surged with spiritual energy, blocking the wind and sand outside, not letting the wind and sand get close to them. However, they soon found that something was wrong. The sandstorm in the desert began to splatter, dancing with the wind. It kept swirling, forming sand curls. The sand tornado erupted with a strong tearing force and began to attack the densely packed self-cultivators. There were no less than a few hundred of them, and the power of each one was getting stronger and stronger. Where did this tornado come from? Everyone felt that something was wrong. It was the first time they had seen such a majestic amount of sand roll in the desert. The amount was beyond everyone's imagination. Most of these 200,000 self-cultivators were outsiders and not natives of Clearwater City. Therefore, they did not know how to deal with so many Salon scrolls. Everyone, let's disperse these sand roll. So that it won't affect our mood, someone suggested. Everyone had the same idea. Soon, everyone began to bring out their own magical weapons and threw them at the Sand Dragon Scroll. The Sand Dragon Scroll was just an anomaly caused by the weather. In the eyes of these people, it was not worth mentioning. Besides, there were a total of 20 places in the desert, and each place had 10,000 self-cultivators. If these 10,000 self-cultivators were to take action, one could imagine how terrifying their power would be. However, when the cultivators' spiritual energy hit the tornado wasn't scattered by the tens of thousands of cultivators as expected. On the contrary, the tornado suddenly swallowed all the cultivators' spiritual energy, and its volume suddenly increased by no less than 10 times. What's going on? Many people did not believe it and continued to attack with the magical weapons in their hands. However, the Sand Dragon Scroll was getting bigger and closer, and there were no signs of it collapsing. Finally, a trace of fear appeared on everyone's face. The 200,000 self-cultivators began to become restless. There's something wrong with the Sand Dragon Scroll. Everyone, retreat. Some people had already sensed that something was wrong and wanted to leave. However, they were surrounded by the desert and were already surrounded by the terrifying Sand Dragon Scroll. The few self-cultivators on the periphery did not have time to escape and were swallowed by the sand tornado. The Sand Dragon Scroll was getting bigger and bigger. The sand roared non-stop and ferociously pounced on the self-cultivators. All the cultivators in the desert panicked and began to scatter in all directions. Those with higher cultivations ran away quickly, but those with lower cultivations were simply unable to break free from the strong suction force of the tornado. They were directly sucked into the tornado, screaming madly in shock and anger. Soon, there was no more sound coming from them. Since you came to watch my competition, I have to collect some tickets. All of you will become my artwork under my Sand Dragon Scroll. Sikong Chiwen's cold laughter spread throughout the desert and exploded in everyone's ears. Everyone was trembling in fear as they tried to avoid the Sand Dragon Scroll. However, the Sand Dragon Scroll followed them like a shadow, swallowing batch after batch of self-cultivators. No one would have thought that the Sand Dragon Scroll in the desert was actually created by Sikong Chiwen. How can Sikong Chiwen control so much sand? This is completely impossible. Could he be a soil human? A terrifying thought spread through everyone's mind. No one knew who shouted, But an endless fear suddenly enveloped everyone's heart. If a soil human appeared in the desert, then the desert was simply the best battlefield for them. However, how could Sikong Chiwon be a soil human? Even if he was a soil human, how could he control so many sand dragon scrolls with just the power of a single human? After experiencing the funeral in the desert, you will all be reborn as the people of Desert Eagle Demon King Hai Dongqing. You should feel honored. Sikong Chiwon couldn't stop laughing. His eyes turned brown like a grain of sand, strange and unpredictable. Desert Eagle Demon King Hai Dongqing, everyone's face changed. Could it be that Sikong Chiwon was a demon? The sand dragon scroll swallowed every self-cultivator. All kinds of self-cultivators were sucked into the sand dragon scroll. Their terrified voices disappeared in the sand dragon scroll in the blink of an eye. Not even a single bone was left. If we charge out together, there will definitely be a sliver of hope to escape. In less than a moment, 1/10 of the self-cultivators were already swallowed by the sand dragon scroll. The remaining self-cultivators were completely trapped like beast. The sand dragon scroll came from all directions and surrounded all the self-cultivators. A powerful tearing force wreaked havoc. The moment someone got too close, they would disappear in the blink of an eye. Charge out. I spent so much effort to create this huge battle between extreme immortals just to lure you self-cultivators here. Where do you think you're going? Sikong Chiwon laughed arrogantly. His voice was like a thunderclap that resounded through the sky, shocking everyone. This battle between extreme immortals was just a gimmick deliberately created by Sikong Chiwon. But what was Sikong Chiwon's goal? Could it be to help Desert Eagle Demon King break free from the seal? Mu Yu struggled to stand up. Little Shuai and Long Ting both jumped onto his shoulders. Mu Yu panted heavily. He felt very weak. After using the array, too much of his life force was sucked away. Even he couldn't hold on. Life force. I need life force. Mu Yu grabbed Mu Ling's sword. He wanted to suck life force from it because it was originally the most vibrant thing in the world. However, Mu Ling's sword only trembled slightly. It didn't move at all. After it was infected by the Netherworld Grass Death Aura, its life force was no longer pure. It couldn't provide Mu Yu with true life force. The vast surroundings were already surrounded by tens of thousands of sand dragons. There wasn't a single plant. Without a plant, it meant that Mu Yu couldn't take life force from the plants. His current situation wasn't optimistic. Shua. The sand under Mu Yu's feet suddenly spun. It instantly formed a sand curtain that enveloped Mu Yu. The sand spun and danced around Mu Yu. A huge aura instantly pressed down on Mu Yu. Little Shuai slapped his head and snatched the shadow clone sword from Mu Yu's hand. He muttered, Mu Yu, the life force you need is in the shadow clone sword. When you used the array just now, your life force didn't flow away. Instead, it was firmly trapped in the sword. Its small claws quickly swiped across the shadow clone sword. The shadow clone sword seemed to be responding to Little Shuai. It actually lit up with a green light. Then, Little Shuai returned the shadow clone sword to Mu Yu. Mu Yu held onto the shadow clone sword. He could clearly feel the life force in the shadow clone sword slowly moving. Then, it actually returned to Mu Yu's body. Mu Yu was too lazy to ask what Little Shuai had to do with the shadow clone sword. He felt that something that had flowed out of his body was gradually recovering. The feeling of weakness had already left him. It was as if he had been reborn. However, the sand curtain around him was already covering Mu Yu's body. At this moment, Mu Yu didn't have time to dodge. The spirit energy shield around him was swallowed up by the sand. Even the array pattern couldn't escape. This sand was really strange. You too, hold on tight. Mu Yu shouted. His whole body had already merged into Mu Ling's sword. Then, the sand curtain covered Mu Ling's sword tightly in the blink of an eye, turning it into a sand sculpture. Not only him, but in the blink of an eye, the 200,000 self-cultivators were completely corroded by the sand curtain. Even the body integration stage self-cultivators were able to escape. In the entire desert, Sikong Chiwon was the only living person left. The sand curtain gradually dissipated. One by one, figures stood in the desert. These were the 200,000 self-cultivators who came to watch the battle. A quarter of an hour ago, they were still people who could move. However, at this moment, every self-cultivator's body was tightly wrapped in sand. They had become sand sculptures and were still struggling to escape. Sikong Chiwon slowly walked in front of each sand sculpture. His eyes were filled with a scorching brown light. Then, he suddenly looked up to the sky and let out a long whistle. The sound was extremely distant, like some kind of calling whistle. Then, the restored Death Desert suddenly trembled violently. The speed of the sand around the Death Desert became faster and faster. Then, the Death Desert began to split and move. It moved to a mysterious position, leaving a whirlpool of sand in the center. In the center of the whirlpool, a spire gradually appeared. Then, the first floor, the second floor, until 7 floors appeared. Then, it slowly stopped. After a rough estimation, each floor of the tower was about 10 meters high. These 7 floors were about 70 meters high. The exterior of this 7-floor tower was crimson red. The body of the tower was carved with strange reliefs. Upon closer inspection, it looked like a battle scene between the human race, the human, and the demon race. It was very spectacular. Sikong Chiwon looked at the 7-floor tower. The fanaticism in his eyes became more and more obvious. Chapter 547. The moment the 7-story Sand Eagle Exquisite Pagoda appeared, the entire desert seemed to become a bit austere. There was even a hint of demonic aura spreading out. Sikong Chiwon's eyes flashed with a brown light. He stretched out his hands, and a vast amount of spiritual energy flowed from his hands into the towering Desert Eagle Exquisite Pagoda. The entire pagoda glowed brighter and brighter. As Sikong Chiwon's spirit force poured in, the tall Sand Eagle Exquisite Pagoda trembled. An inexplicable force flowed around it and the pagoda continued to shrink. The originally 70-meter tall Sand Eagle Exquisite Pagoda became half a meter tall and flew into Sikong Chiwon's hands. Sand Eagle Exquisite Blood Pagoda, the great Sand Eagle Demonic King. Sikong Chiwon's voice was very hoarse as if he was chanting. He gently rotated the shrunken 7-story pagoda in his hands. Every time he rotated a story, the desert would shake once. He rotated it 7 times and the desert shook 7 times. Then, with the Death Desert as the center, the rock caved in and an ancient city gate slowly appeared. There was a huge eagle carved on the ancient city gate. It was very lifelike, as if it was about to spread its wings and soar under the sky. However, the eagle's face was filled with unwillingness, as if it was only able to fly halfway before it was trapped by the city gate. This was exactly the same as what Muyu saw at the Sand Eagle Imperial City's city gate. The yellow sand of the desert began to dance in the air behind the ancient city gate. Countless grains of sand gradually condensed into a towering cylindrical building that reached into the clouds. More and more yellow sand appeared, as if it had its own consciousness, constantly perfecting every detail and every texture of the building. After about a quarter of an hour, an awe-inspiring tall building appeared in the middle of the desert. The circular building had a diameter of about 200 meters and a height of several thousand meters. This building was divided into a story every 10 meters, and there were countless squares protruding from each story. Each square was about the size of a person and had a small window. It was like a small room, which was very strange. Sikong Chiwon slowly walked to the city gate. There was a depression on the city gate that was in the shape of a pagoda. Sikong Chiwon embedded the 7-story strange tower perfectly into the wall. Then, the ancient city gate opened with a creak. The entire eagle also split open from the middle, revealing a dark passage. As the people of Desert Eagle Demon King Hai Dongqing, "It's time for you to go home." Sikong Chiwon turned around and said to the self-cultivators who had been turned into sand sculptures. None of the cultivators broke free. They didn't react at all. But all of a sudden, the sand sculptures began to move stiffly. They seemed to have received some sort of order and began to walk towards the city gate. The sand eagles were moving in an orderly manner. Their walking speed was very fast. Some sand eagles were even flying in the sky. The sand condors in other places also flew over, and the black mass of sand condors covered the sky and the earth as they poured into the dark city gate. The 200,000 cultivators who had turned into sand sculptures had already lost their consciousness. Like walking corpses, they had all disappeared into the dark city gate in just 4 hours. Cracks appeared on the sand surrounding Mu Ling's sword, and countless green leaves spread out. However, these leaves quickly retracted and only circled around the cracks. Could this be where Desert Eagle Demon King was sealed? Mu Yu wasn't controlled by the sand inside Mu Ling's sword. If he wanted to come out, he could use Mu Ling's sword to escape. However, when he heard about Desert Eagle Demon King, he didn't want to come out. Instead, he wanted to sneak into the passage and see what was going on. He wasn't confident in dealing with Sikong Chiwen, whose cultivation had skyrocketed. He could only act according to the situation. Back in the desert forest, he saw Desert Eagle Royal City and even stole Desert Eagle Demon King's Ghost Falcon from Tien Bushui and the demon race. It was said that the Ghost Falcon was the key to finding Desert Eagle Demon King. Mu Yu hadn't figured out how to use the Ghost Falcon after so long. The Ghost Falcon was still lying in the exquisite Desert Eagle, and the exquisite Desert Eagle was in Mu Yu's spatial pouch. If it wasn't for the sudden change today, Mu Yu would have forgotten about the existence of the exquisite Desert Eagle. However, looking at Sikong Chiwen, he seemed to have a close relationship with Desert Eagle Demon King. Could it be that Sikong Chiwen had become a dark horse on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard in such a short time because of Desert Eagle Demon King? Creating a gimmick to fight Tien Bushui had caused a lot of commotion in the self-cultivation world. Later, Mu Yu's participation caused more and more self-cultivators to come. They wanted to see the battle between the 3 supreme immortals with the most potential. No one thought that this was a trap set by Sikong Chiwen. The reason why Sikong Chiwen didn't attack Mu Yu at the Mu Mansion was probably because of the arrival of these 200,000 self-cultivators. With Mu Yu's reputation, more self-cultivators would be attracted. However, Sikong Chiwen deliberately turned these 200,000 self-cultivators into sand sculptures. What was his goal? Mu Yu felt that things were getting weirder and weirder. Seeing that countless sand sculptures had entered the passage, Mu Yu thought for a moment and let Mu Ling's sword follow them in. What was strange was that the outside world was a hot desert, but after entering the passage, they felt a chill coming from all directions. Countless sand sculptures were still rushing into the darkness. There were only whistling sounds in the passage, and there was no pushing or shoving. All the sand sculptures seemed to be in order. This passage wasn't long, and it only took a moment for them to enter this strange cylindrical building. He looked at everything inside in shock. The scene in front of him was really spectacular. From the outside, the walls looked like countless protruding squares, but inside, the walls were sunken squares. At this moment, those self-cultivators who had been turned into sand sculptures were rushing into those sunken areas in an orderly manner. Everyone found their own place and stood. There were also many sand sculptures flying into the sky. From the bottom to the top, there were countless places for these sand sculptures to stand. The sand sculptures were densely packed throughout the entire building. They were like birds that had found their nest. They didn't collide with each other, nor did they compete for a position. It seemed that each sand sculpture knew which floor and which position they should stand on. Soon, all the 200,000 sand sculptures were standing on the walls of the building. The surroundings fell into silence again, and there were no other disturbances. Mu Yu came out of Mu Ling's sword. He carefully jumped into the air and stood behind a sand sculpture. He poked his head out and looked around. Then, Sikong Chiwen slowly walked in. His face was still flashing with a fanatical expression. He rose into the air and floated in the center. He glanced at the sand sculptures on the walls, as if he was very satisfied with these masterpieces of art. He opened his arms and a strange whistling sound came from his mouth, which echoed throughout the building. The ground suddenly trembled slightly, and an altar slowly emerged. The altar was engraved with countless complicated runes. Each rune was intertwined with each other and emitted a yellow light. These runes were simple and powerful. They had a very majestic power and were vast and ancient, as if they had experienced countless years. Even if Mu Yu had a treasure like the chaos yin and yang, he didn't dare to try to control these runes. At this moment, a human figure was sitting cross-legged on the altar. Mu Yu's eyes widened. This figure was none other than the Desert Eagle Demon King. He had seen Demon King Desert Eagle's statue in the Desert Eagle King City. At that time, Demon King Desert Eagle's statue had been brought to life by the demon race's demonic arts. The person on the altar was exactly the same as Demon King Desert Eagle's statue. Mu Yu was sure that this was a real person and not a statue. The runes on the altar emitted a faint light, trapping Demon King Desert Eagle within. Needless to say, it was a human almighty that had sealed him here. Mu Yu's attainments in array arts were no longer the same as before. He could see that the runes on the altar were gradually weakening. Clearly, Demon King Desert Eagle's seal was also gradually weakening, just like the second firmament Demon King White Ape. However, there were no demons in the desert at this moment. They didn't come to Demon King Desert Eagle's rescue. This meant that even the demons didn't know where Demon King Desert Eagle was sealed by the human almighty. Back then, Mu Yu had obtained exquisite Desert Eagle. This probably caused the demons to lose track of where Demon King Desert Eagle was sealed. Sikong Chiwen had already landed on the side of the altar. He respectfully knelt on the ground and said excitedly, "Demon King, your servant is at your beck and call." Could Sikong Chiwen really be a demon? But how did he hide from the supreme immortal ranking? However, Demon King Desert Eagle was still sitting cross-legged on the ground. He didn't even open his eyes. It was as if he didn't hear what Sikong Chiwen said. Sikong Chiwen waited for a long time, but there was no response. He raised his head in confusion and looked at Demon King Desert Eagle. Suddenly, his expression changed. Mu Yu also felt that something was wrong. With his perception of life force, he clearly knew that Demon King Desert Eagle's body didn't have any signs of life. Demon King Desert Eagle was already dead. How was this possible? The 10 great demon kings were immortal existences. They also had immortal bodies. Even if they were sealed, their lives were limitless. This was because their bodies were a perfect balance of the 5 elements. Back when Mu Yu met Demon King White Ape at the second firmament, this shameless old monkey was still jumping up and down energetically. After he escaped, he even smashed the entire mountain that sealed him with a mighty punch, scaring the few nascent soul human youths. The 10 great demon kings couldn't be killed. If one wanted to kill them, the only way to kill them was to extract all the spiritual energy around them and let the spiritual energy in their bodies gradually drain away. Only by relying on time to wear down their bodies and make them very weak could one kill them. At that time, Demon King White Ape was almost killed by people from the gate of hell. But now, Demon King White Ape was gradually recovering and had achieved his immortal body again. However, Demon King Desert Eagle's body had no signs of life. Impossible. Impossible. How could the great Demon King die? Impossible. Sikong Chiwen's originally fanatical expression suddenly became extremely frightened. He couldn't accept the fact that Demon King Desert Eagle was dead. He wanted to rush over to check on Demon King Desert Eagle's condition, but the array pattern on the altar flickered and sent him flying. Although the array pattern was weakening, it wasn't completely weakened yet. Mu Yu was also very puzzled. Demon King Desert Eagle had been trapped in the seal all this time. If Demon King White Ape didn't die, then Demon King Desert Eagle shouldn't have died under normal circumstances. Unless someone attacked Demon King Desert Eagle when he was weak like the evil people from the gate of hell. But that didn't make sense because if the seal hadn't completely dissipated, no one could enter. Mu Yu carefully checked the situation of the seal on the altar. This seal was similar to Demon King White Ape's seal, but maybe because of the different places, Mu Yu deduced that it would take a while for this seal to be completely broken. Maybe a few months, maybe a few years, but it definitely wouldn't be now. Everything seemed to be a bit confusing. What kind of existence was Sikong Chiwen? Even the demon race and the people from Stargate couldn't find Demon King Desert Eagle's seal. How could Sikong Chiwen alone find it? How could Sikong Chiwon have such great means to take down 200,000 self-cultivators in an instant and turn them all into sand sculptures? How could he have such a great ability alone? My lord, where are you? Come out quickly, something happened to Demon King Desert Eagle. Sikong Chiwon frantically stood up and shouted anxiously. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.